Well, good evening, everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. Welcome in to On the Hunt tonight, where we are going on the hunt with Kevin Murphy. You guys are going to be in for the biggest treat tonight. I'm super excited. I've been backstage talking to Kevin. I was talking to him earlier today, and the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight will blow your mind, y'all. Kevin is a dynamic human. And I actually got to know him a little bit through when Barton was on the show. Barton's in the chat tonight. What's up, Barton Nunley? And I think Kevin was in the chat, and Barton had a lot of really wonderful things to say about him and suggested that I bring him on the show. And gosh darn it, he's here tonight, y'all. And so buckle up, buttercups. We've got a lot to discuss tonight. And I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining me and Jimmy Payne on Thursday night. Gosh, we got into, what all do we talk about Thursday? Oh, Dulce Base. We talked about Dulce Base in the midst of all of this UFO disclosure and the government, maybe some intelligence officers. I've seen so much just talk about this. Where they say that some intelligence officers went to some of the pastors. And two people that I know personally were involved in that meeting, and that's Joel Thomas and Tony Merkel, I believe. And so I don't know what's going on with that, y'all. But anyways, they're telling everybody to prepare the congregations for full disclosure on aliens and ETs. But I don't know if you guys saw some of that dump that went out. Was that today or yesterday? It wasn't that exciting. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. It's more breadcrumbs, in my opinion. But anyways, it's a step forward in the right direction. And like I always tell my audience, we are the disclosure. Okay, so thank you guys again for being here tonight. Y'all just being here shows me people just want to know the truth about these things. And tonight we're going to give you guys full disclosure on a lot of things that Kevin has actually experienced. And so, yeah, y'all, like I said, it's going to be a wonderful show tonight. Okay, if you guys would like to follow along with all my shows, I've got an archive of my shows. I have my calendar of events, and everything you need to know about the Cryptid Huntress is over on my website. Go to thecryptidhuntress.com. Also, I do have my YouTube channel here. I have a Rumble channel, and we're broadcasting on Twitter, aka X, tonight, and this live. And I also have a podcast. So go to any podcasting platforms, and you guys can find our podcast over there. Just look up the Cryptid Huntress. Also, if you'd like to support my work, I do have a Patreon, and I have an Etsy shop called War Woman Goods as well. So thanks, y'all, for all your support. All right. Well, let's get into our show tonight, because I don't want to waste any time. I want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms, the baby mamas, the mamas, everybody out there. Happy Mother's Day, y'all. And I hope you enjoy your day tomorrow. Okay, so tonight we are going on the hunt with Kevin Murphy to discuss his encounters with a shape-shifting friend, okay, werewolves, dogmen, and his mother's experience with the Fae, actually. Kevin grew up in Washington, D.C., the Maryland area, where a love of mythology, archaeology, sports, and chess gradually was supplanted by the desire to become a professional musician. A series of prescient dreams and a galvanizing experience Meeting the legendary Muddy Waters sent Kevin westward, where he landed in Laguna Beach. He's a West Coast dude now. Okay. Upon arrival, he started meeting and playing with local musicians, and not long after, started dating and eventually moved in with a professional medium. This woman was from a long line of powerful mediums, French and French American. The gift handed down from mother to daughter for many generations, and he watched her manifest phenomenon, watched colors of light sweep through the room, saw her face molecularly rearrange itself until she looked entirely like another person, only to morph into another and another. This went on every night as weeks turned into months. Ectoplasm, nature spirits, and transfiguration were the order of the day, so to speak. Upon returning to the Maryland, D.C. area, Kevin continued to experience prescient dreams while also having a cryptid encounter just 5 minutes from his mother's house. His experience also includes his mother stepping off of a D.C. Metro bus into an ancient Irish village where, guided by an old tiny woman, not more than 4 feet tall, she was led through this ancient village. And of course, he's got a lot of knowledge in everything esoteric, paranormal, cryptid. I've had a wonderful time talking to him, and you guys are going to love it yourselves tonight. Please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Kevin Murphy. Hey, Kevin.
Thank you. What an intro. You're doing okay. You got that last part. I don't know about how much knowledge I have, but one thing life offers you, if not wisdom at my age, is certainly a certain perspective. And you were talking about Dulce earlier. You know, when the COVID thing landed on us, like many people, I was angry and afraid. And for some reason, my instincts guided me. I made a tangential leap to start studying. I don't really know what the catalyst was specifically, but I started to read about UFOs, UAPs. Now, I had a friend who was an actor who's been in a lot of films you would recognize. And if you saw him, you'd think, oh, I know that guy. I guess you'd call him a character actor. And he did a film with Mel Gibson called Signs that some of you may be familiar with. And it's about the minister that loses his faith after his wife gets killed in the car accident. And the end of the show, it climaxes with a scene of aliens showing up, and the encompassing effect on Mel Gibson's character's family and the world at large. And after that, my buddy just couldn't stop talking about the Greys. Now, his day job was doing voiceovers for CNN, but he was in stuff like Her Alibi with Demi Moore, and he did a lot of big things. But his life was changed by virtue of this experience with Mel, who is all on board. I know that Mel Gibson is a Christian. And he has a particular brand of Catholicism that my mother said was rather esoteric. Now, my mom was raised in an orphanage by Irish nuns, so anything would seem esoteric to somebody from that cloistered environment. But I remember hearing my friend Ted talk about the Greys, and you mentioned Dulce earlier, and so much is happening. We live in amazing times. I said to anybody that would listen that 2026 was going to be a big year for that. And I don't think you need a crystal ball or be an intuitive person to have intuited that. But it's certainly here we are, and there's a lot going on. And I think you're going to be seeing something almost on a daily basis. It's interesting that of all the nations in the world, we're the last to do full disclosure. I mean, I think Brazil was one of the first, then France, Great Britain, even Russia started letting their people have all their stuff. But here we are. And one thing about Trump, whether you're a fan of his or not, is that he's definitely made a point of trying to get disclosure more than I can think of any president. Sorry, I got one eye on my cat. Hold on a second. Give me a second. I'm rescuing the cricket from my cat.
Okay. No, that's wild, y'all. Okay, so I saw Dave Scott. Y'all know I'm good friends with Dave, and I had a show over on Spaced Out Radio, and so Dave put out a message on Facebook yesterday, and it said, Trump is now the disclosure president, the president of disclosure, and please keep your comments clean. He said it was kind of funny because, yeah, I mean, he has put out more disclosure, y'all, than any other president so far, right? So,
I didn't mean to usher in any political debate.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not scared of it.
I'm apolitical. I should have a T-shirt that says that. I should also have another T-shirt that says, how to keep both hands on the wheel when you need one to hold your nose. Because I really get irritated with the current state of affairs. But I am getting back to our topic of Dulce. Dulce was something you brought up earlier, and that was one of the first things that I latched onto when I started studying. Because let's face it, during COVID, there wasn't a lot we could do. And like many people, I dove headfirst into activities that were, the only things you could do, as secreted as we were away. I really, in a short period of time, put as much together as I could about that. And there's literally an embarrassment of riches in regards the UFO and everything that implies. I think we're going to see a lot this year.
I do too. Kevin, it's like I said earlier, we are the disclosure, right? We're the disclosure. Right. And so that's why I love bringing people like yourself on here to talk about, I've experienced UFOs, I've experienced the cryptids, I've experienced all that. And I like to bring other people on. I can tell my story all day, but it's wonderful to have other people who have had similar experiences to me. And you have experiences of things that I've never experienced before, like the shape-shifting and things like that. I mean, I think this is fantastic.
It's interesting. Everyone, we're a separate universe. My mom, like most mothers, was a saint, and she brought me up in a Leave It to Beaver like kind of atmosphere. We didn't have any money. My mom was raised, as I said, in an orphanage by Irish nuns, and my father grew up on the res. He was what used to be called a half-breed in those politically incorrect times. My background was humble. I was out working, helping mom out at the age of 14. But my mother, like most good mothers, fed my interests, and most of them were academic, sports and, academia, particularly ancient history and mythology. But, a wise man once said, what you give energy to, you give life to. And I think we've all seen that evidence of that in our own lives. And I started having, my mother was remarkably open in some ways and inflexible in others. But she did her best to straddle that line, as it were. And the result. But at one point in my life, I think this has to be said. I grew up in DC in Maryland. My mom was a single mom, and I have to say that the influence of African American culture and life is a profound one for me, and the thread that reflects that is so interwoven with the fabric of my life. If it was yanked, my entire world would collapse. From the woman that changed my diapers when my mother was at work to the guy that calls me on Skype every Tuesday I've known all my life. And the music that I played for years. And when I was working, I did a series of blue-collar jobs starting the age I was 14. By the time I was 18, I was working for the county in Maryland. And I was working at a time when it was very racially polarized. It was basically two divisions, a street division and a tree division. And most of the cats that lived up in the country, and some of them lived so far up the country, it would take them an hour and a half just to get to work to sign in. But they worked in the tree division, and the brothers worked in the street division. And it was literally just like that. And I had just grown my hair after getting 4 years of ROTC. And at that time, if a pickup truck drove by a couple of long hairs, it was a 50-50 chance it was a fight. And because of everything that was going on in Vietnam and all of that, and everything that long hair represented to people. So working with the brothers caused some consternation among some of my other peers, but the dust gradually settled on that. And meanwhile, I'm getting to know the guys I'm working with. It was basically 4 laborers and a pit boss, as it were. And my boss was a very dark-skinned man who was in his late 50s, growing up in Georgia. And this is in 1974, So you can imagine the kind of things he went through in the Deep South when he was a young man. And he really hated white people, man. And to his credit, it just took he was sullen, but not overtly hostile. Obviously, we have to keep a job and get along with people. But it was not difficult to see, and if he had any kind of brains and a heart, you can understand. But to make a long story not much longer, I gradually proved myself the way everyone does. You show up for work on time and you do your part. And as time moved inexorably on, we became very close. I think he was tickled that a young kid was playing guitar, bring my guitar to work and play at lunch. And I was blown away. The guy that I was working with knew some of the guys that I was studying, listening to. So we became very good friends, and they started calling us the Odd Couple, which was a movie that was popular at the time. I think the TV show was just getting popularity, and he and I became very good friends. And as time continued to move on, I eventually left there to focus on, the guitar. But I stayed in touch with my friends, and I lived in a black neighborhood, so my friends felt comfortable visiting. Although my boss did not. We just talked on the phone occasionally. One night, after I think it'd been about a year and a half, I had a dream that I was back at work, but there was nobody there but me and my boss. But he was wearing a 3-piece brown suit with a vest, a pocket watch, and I'm thinking to myself, what the heck's he doing with a suit? Where is everybody else? And as I thought that, he turned and looked at me in the dream, and his face was just beaming with light. I wake up, and I got goosebumps everywhere. I get up and I go outside, put a pair of pants, I go outside my house, and walking down the sidewalk is a guy I had just taken to see, Eric Clapton, who was also part of the crew. And in those days where I lived, most people did not go very far from, people of color did not go very far from where they lived by themselves. And I was surprised to see Mickey out there. And I immediately hailed him and asked him, hey, what are you doing here? And before he could answer, I said, I had the strangest dream about KC. And he stopped walking and just stared at me. And he said, what was the dream? And I told him, and he said, oh my God. And he sits down on the steps. And I looked at him, I said, man, what's going on? He says, I don't know how to tell you this. I know you guys were close. And immediately, with the use of past tense, I became concerned. And I said, what happened, man? And he looked at me and said, well, he went fast. We were just working on the road, and he had a heart attack, keeled over. The reason I'm here today is that the first day we could view the body, and they buried him in that 3-piece brown suit you just described with the vest, a pocket watch. And at that point, I had to sit down. Now, I know a lot of people listening to this are thinking, oh, gosh, that happened to me or so-and-so. It's not that uncommon, but I was pretty young at the time. Still, I was like 20, I think. And it was the first in a series of dreams like that I've had about every 2 years or so ever since. And it was a head scratcher for sure. Not long after that, I had the galvanizing experience, the muddy waters that our hostess has referred to. And I wanted to go to Chicago, which is where all the blues guys were hanging out at the time. But my mom was afraid that town would chew me up and spit me out. And she was probably right. And we had a friend, as fate would have, that was in Laguna Beach, who had been in the neighborhood and moved out there. And my mom convinced me that would be a safer, better call. So I went hurling out west, stuck my thumb out, left the guitar and a sleeping bag and a little airline bag full of clothes and a few dollars. And I got to Laguna Beach 3.5 days later. And I ended up bonding with a guy that was a DJ from Colorado, from Denver, but he had come to Laguna Beach and opened up a record store. And he was selling used records. And he had orange crates. He had them in. And it was a humble little operation, but we actually did very well. And by the time I left, we had 3 different stores. But while I was there, he was getting death threats for dating a white woman. Now, I had just come from, to so many people at that time, particularly where I grew up, California represented so many things, progressive and otherwise. It was the golden land of opportunity still for so many. And I was at odds trying to come to terms with what I thought was something so anachronistic, but at the same time, I recognized how serious it was. And uh, when I got to the store and became friends with him, he quickly realized that he could save some money. He fired all the surfer kids that were working for him and had me work full time. Most of these kids didn't really care about music. They just were, probably doing what their parents, if you want this trust fund, you're going to go get a job. So they're doing something. But so I would open the store. I was working for $2.50 an hour. I'd open the store, do a 4-hour shift, and then go out to the beach and come back. And at night, I worked for free, but I was able to sleep in the store. So that's how I got off the street when I got there. And after, once I got comfortable in that routine, the next phase, what happened was that I had to field these calls from these guys that were threatening him about. And when Sam wasn't dating his gal, when he wasn't spending the night with her, he was in the store with me. And I just said, look, these guys are, we have to deal with them. They're bullies, and most bullies are cowards, but occasionally there's the kind of bully you have to fight. But this is not going to stop until we deal with it. He said, well, you don't have to deal. I'll expect you to. And I said, well, we're friends now, and I'm living here with you. I'm not going to turn my back, So with much consternation, he agreed to go down with me to the main beach where we met these guys. Right now, next to Hotel Laguna. If anyone knows Laguna Beach, the public bathrooms are right there, right next to Hotel Laguna where the main beach is. And, I just, asked, hey, which one of you guys is supposed to be the tough guy? And I've never fancied myself to be that, but I was pretty sure that I just had an instinct that this would go away if we just stood up to them. And that's exactly what happened. And as a result, I bonded even stronger, as you can imagine, with Sam. And in fact, we went to see a documentary called A Film of Jimi Hendrix, which was another bonding experience. We're all dealt with programming, and stereotypes. And I think Sam was going through a lot. He was in his early 20s as well. I'll just put that on hold here and get to the part of the story here because I don't want to do much rambling. You have to rein me in here.
Okay.
Public speaking is not my forte, although I spent years in front of an audience playing guitar. And I've done a few of these shows with this subject matter. I'm exactly, as you're not seeking, I'm not exactly a well-oiled speaker. So
you're great, Kevin. You're doing awesome.
Thank you. Sam and I got to be very close friends. And he was a very funny guy, a really bright guy, a very engaging, very interesting human being. And he said, there's a gal that I want, I just like to do something nice for you. And I said, these are the things that we do for each other. You don't stand up and take a bow for them, but I certainly appreciated that he acknowledged, because it was quite a moment, all that, He said, this is someone I want to meet. And you've probably seen her at breakfast. Every now and then when Sam would stay over at the store, we'd get up and go across the street to a place called the Jolly Roger. And there was a hostess there that was quite attractive and really pleasant, just the kind of person that you would naturally gravitate to in a room full of strangers. And so we made a formal introduction, and we started to date not long after that. And not long after that, I ended up moving in with her.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was just one of those, chemistry laden dynamics. She was fast. She was older. She was 29, and I had just turned 21. And she was a very, very unique person. As I said, she exuded a warmth and a presence of that made you feel comfortable. That put you at ease. Some people just have that art for making others feel comfortable in their presence, and she had that in spades. So it didn't take long before I shared that dream with her. At which point she said, I had a feeling, you're just tuned a little differently, and tonight I want to show you really, more about myself. I think exactly her words are, I'm going to show you what I am, which at the time had kind of ominous portent, but I knew she didn't mean anything, but it was I was thinking, what does this portend, And that night, and to give you some background on this woman, she was very spiritual and very religious, and those things don't always go together. She was very into Jesus Christ, and most people that I knew at that time, which is just slightly post hippie era, the Christians were pretty insular. It was just Jesus and nothing but. But she had a wider template she was drawn from. She acknowledged Krishna and Buddha, and she felt like all major religions lead to the same place if you pursue them with real integrity and faith and kindness. But Christ was her guy, and she had little figurines and statues and paintings and stuff all over our little apartment. And she had a book that she was turning me on to called The Mystical Christ by Manly P. Hall. And I know that he's a controversial figure, but the only point I'm trying to make is her feeling about Jesus and how that guided and strengthened her life. So you can imagine my surprise when she said, "I'm a professional medium from a long line of mediums," and the gift handed down from mother to daughter, going back many generations to France. And I had, like a lot of people, a stereotypical kind of, my idea of mediums was, Laurel and Hardy movies with, crystal balls. And, I didn't know what to make of it. And I pretty much shared that with her. And that night she turned off all the lights in our apartment but one, and she put a towel over it, the remaining light. So you could see a little bit, but not very much. And then she did this beautiful prayer. I guess you could call it an invocation. And she always started off every night with the same beginning: Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Jesus Christ, saints of all religions, we're gathered here in the hope you will manifest your presence, and in doing so, expedite our spiritual. She would really get into it. And this would go on for a couple of minutes. And when she stopped, you could literally feel the silence. You could hear it, And the room, and to say that is what I mean is the room was saturated with peace. And after she finished the prayer, I reflexively started looking around the room. And at this point, I'm sitting at a 45-degree angle from her. She's sitting to my left, and I'm facing west. There's sliding doors. The side is the Pacific Ocean out in front of us. So she's facing north and facing west. She's at a 45-degree angle. And as I kind of reflexively looked over, after a while, I could feel the energy in the room, the calmness of it. But what I noticed was that it looked like heat waves, the best way to describe it. What it looked like when I looked down at the ground, looked around, and then colors of light started swirling through the room. It was beautiful. And when I looked over at her face and form, it looked like a negative from a photograph. Black face and form with a yellow line around her face and body. And it was pretty blown away, I think it's safe to say. And she's only sitting at a couple feet from me. And so I'm kind of looking around the room, look at her, look around the room, look at her. And this continued for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, at which point the negative effect dissipated, and I'm looking back at her face and form the way it was before, like the way we look now normally. And at which point, I don't know what compelled me to do it, but I just started to stare at her face, and it literally started to like vibrate and move. Now, I've done a healthy amount of hallucinogens when I was younger, and one of the first things that I did, and I noticed when I did them, was how the physical manifestations, which was matter altering, and the incredible effect that music had, how all the senses are heightened, but visual distortion of not only things, but people's faces and such. No news to those of you who've tripped. But I'm completely straight. And at this time in my life, I wasn't drinking, wasn't doing anything. I had studied Kung Fu for a while, and I was trying to get centered. I was meditating, exercising. I wasn't doing any kind of substances at all. I'm going to make that perfectly clear. So as I'm watching her face, it literally molecularly rearranged itself right in front of me. It just until she looked completely like another person, as clearly defined as you're looking at yourself in a mirror. And that held its image for 3 or 4 seconds before morphing into still another image. And that image held for 3 or 4 seconds and then morphed into another image. And they were so distinct.
Well, what kind of, Kevin, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like when you say that her face was morphing, right?
Yeah.
And it morphed from one thing to another. Was it like, was her face morphing into other people, into animals?
No, it was just like picture your own face or my face, and it's just the features just change, shift right in front of you, as if somebody is just moving the features around like it's putty. And that's exactly, and I'm telling you that these were as clearly defined, and each image would hold for 3 to 5 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. Remember, this is a long time ago, but I remember, I mean, it was amazing. And when somehow, incredibly, I fell asleep, and I'd say I was maybe watching the phenomena for about maybe 10, 15 minutes tops. And when she woke me up, I looked at her, I said, I don't know how in the heck I could fall asleep in the face of something that profound. And I was really kind of upset, because something like that, you really want to, be present as much as possible for as long as possible. And she just put her hand on my shoulder and she said, Kevin, you're being healed by the Holy Spirit. And I thought that makes perfect sense because, I was fairly young, 21, but, I had lived enough. I'd been on my own for several years and had, been through enough to take full import in that, what she was implying by that. And with that, like a child, I said, well, can we do this again tomorrow night? And she said, yes. And went to sleep, woke up the next day. And this, I asked her before we went to sleep, I said, I asked her, I was just in a state of awe. And she said, well, what do you think you saw? And I said, well, what intuition is telling me is that while you're in that state, you're at a certain vibration frequency. So you will draw to you like a magnet others that are equally gifted that would maybe come through you. But why would they all be women? And why would they all be so beautiful? I mean, I didn't make that clear. I'm sorry. The images, 98% of the time, 95% at least, were all female. And they look so beautiful. They didn't look human. They did. I mean, human? I can't. It almost hurt to look at them. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful people in this world. Let's face it, and everyone, we all have ideas of what we think is, beautiful. We all have our tastes, as it were. But by anyone's standard, these images would have been jaw-dropping. And I'm not even kidding a little bit. Wow. And when it went on the second night, same thing. And this, she said to me, after you shared that dream with me, I promised myself that I would do this because I felt that it was very important for me to share with you exactly what I am and what I think your role is going to be. And I said, my role, I'll get back to that. So this went on night after night. And sometimes the first time this happened, that she manifested something other than humans, was a talk about jaw dropping. I don't remember how long we had been in session before this happened, but one night, instead of a female image, I got the image of like real horrific features, like a gargoyle, and then a werewolf. And these images, and again, I would continue to fall asleep after about 15, 20 minutes. I was lasting a little longer, but not much. But when I asked her about that, she said, were you not even vaguely disconcerted? And I said, no, because the feeling in the room after she says that prayer, is so one of such peace and serenity that no images are even, as I said, vaguely disconcerting to me. And that's why I just, just only mix past the popcorn. I mean, who needs cable? I mean, it was quite an experience, and all the visual phenomena that was the colors of light. It was just incredible. It never got old. I see you reading some of the comments. I didn't even keep I don't know how to view into
It's
the
okay.
comments. I don't want people to think I'm ignoring them. If anyone's asking questions, forgive me.
It's okay, Kevin. I was just pulling up some comments and stuff. You don't have to. There's not anything you need to answer or anything. Okay, first of all, let me take a quick commercial break and thank the people who have given some super stickers tonight, some supporting the channel. And so I want to thank so much, y'all. Nathan Davis, thank you so much for that super sticker. I really appreciate it. And Muriel Angel, thank you so much for that super sticker. You're awesome. And also, Kent, thank you for that. He says this is your Mother's Day gift. So thank you, Kent. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate y'all very much. Oh yeah, and War Criminal too. We got Matt in here as well. What's up, War Criminal? Happy Mother's Day. So thank you, Matt, for being here today, and I appreciate that. Now, Kevin, I wanted to ask you. I have a couple of questions. Okay, but one of the questions would be like, okay, and maybe it's kind of a statement and a question a little bit. Okay, so your girlfriend at the time, your friend was like, I want to show you my true form or who I really am, and so. Do you think that this is something? I mean, she obviously didn't show this to everybody, but what do you think was like?
Let me tell you something. I didn't. I perhaps should have said that to you earlier before we came on. I'm sorry. I'm really not that. I'm not experienced at this. But
you're pretty smart, though. I can tell, Kevin.
So much for fear. Awesome. But what I unconsciously left out was that this woman had been part of a metaphysical church called the Church. I wonder if I get in trouble saying this over the air. There still exists, but I'll take my chance. The Church of Mind Science, and they were a group in Long Beach, California, headed up by a man, and this particular guy. The abbreviated version of this is that. She was the real thing, and people came from all over the country and sometimes parts of the world to ask questions about loved ones. And Meredith's response to me was, it's one thing to keep the lights on. It's another thing to charge the sums that they were starting to charge for my gift. It wasn't ever intended for that way, to be used in that way. And she had left in a bewildered state of disappointment and maybe a sense of betrayal too, from what I remember, and was working as a hostess at this restaurant, and so, I mean, I didn't have to be convinced that she was integral. I mean, but the more she told me, the more it was revealed about her life, the more that just confirmed my initial instincts. She's a wonderful person, and so I thought that might be helpful because she was very disconcerted by that, and she said, I haven't opened up and shared this with anyone. You're the first since I left the church. And because of the dream and because your sincerity, because she knew that I had started reading books on mythology at a very, very young age. I think before I was even 10, I was reading stuff, about particularly the Greeks, whether it's mythology or Herodotus. But I was drawn to it, like so many of us are at a young age, to certain things. And that extended into other things, like studying books of about meditation, mysticism of various kinds, ceremonial magic. And I very quickly went in and out. I thought, this magic thing, I could see the appeal, but that's not something that my instincts told me just to keep it at arm's length. No judgment for any of those who are acolytes or neophytes or masters. I know enough to know that unless you are with someone who is you trust and is an adept, it's better left alone. And I think one of the things that Jessica and I were talking about earlier is that I believe that one of the big problems in the world today is the massive abuse of ritual magic and the Pandora's box effect. Certainly everything's ratcheted up in the last several years in terms of all this activity, cryptids and otherwise. It's just It's incredible.
It is incredible. You know, so I know you've been a part of the music scene for a long time, and you're a very accomplished musician. And I know we really haven't gotten into all your background, of course, but you are a musician, and that is something that a lot of musicians, you know, I grew up in the 1980s with this satanic panic. Remember that?
Right, right.
You know, and but we've learned, and even today it's very prevalent in a lot of the pop culture, I guess. There is a lot of ritualistic stuff going on. You know, we used to hear about, what was that? Was it they had that house on the Loch Ness. Who is that? Not Led Zeppelin, the guys from Led Zeppelin, and it was like where Aleister Crowley.
Crowley's castle there.
Yes.
In Boleskine Manor.
Yes, that's it.
And he bought the entire book collection called The Equinox, which was Crowley's I believe his book of magic, you know. Yeah, I started reading stuff like that at a very young age, and being drawn to the blues like a magnet. The whole mythology, the bluesman sells the soul to the devil at the crossroads to get this virtuoso ability. That, you know, actually, you know, you can go back to Paganini to find that theme. The classical violinist was rumored to have done the same thing and played with the same spellbinding magic and intensity that these other guys that I'm mentioning, Robert Johnson, who was the Hendrix of his day, and that drew me. Just from a young romantic ideal, you know, the more positive aspects of it drew me in right away, and the power of the music was, you know, self-explanatory for anyone's ever heard that stuff. You know, it's really quite something. And there was enough of those masters, what they call the post-war blues men and women. Were still a lot of them around when I was young, and that was very evocative to me. And I was able to meet and play with some of them. Although you can't, as I was telling Jessica, you can't find me on the internet very easily because I didn't use my name, but that's another conversation. But no, Joint Jokers, you can find evidence of, I actually, the band worked 12 to 50 nights a month, every month for years and years in the mid-Atlantic and southern areas. And everywhere I moved after that, I would put a version of the Juke Joint Jokers together. And we weren't setting the world on fire, but we played consistently, and we worked with a lot of well-known acts, you know, from pop people like Eddie Money to more esoteric acts like Tito Puente, who was kind of like the muddy waters of Latin, of salsa, Latin jazz. So yeah,
you know, when I think of blues, like I grew up in music. I was a singer and very, very much into music my entire life, and performing arts and musicals and stuff. When I think of blues music, and my favorite genres of music, I gotta say, I love blues, but I love bluegrass too. Bluegrass and country music, and I like gangster rap. Shoot, I like everything. Okay,
I like some of it too. I mean, in fact, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'll listen to all of it. But you know, when you think about blues music, and I know you are an accomplished blues, you know, musician, I think of the Crossroads. Okay, I'm thinking of the Crossroads. One of my favorite movies is called "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" You ever seen that?
That's a classic. But did you see the movie Crossroads that John Fusco wrote? The movie with Jamie Gertz and the Karate Kid. Well, the Karate Kid plays a young, you know, aspiring. He's a classical guitar player, but he loves the blues, and he finds out that Willie Brown, a character that Robert Johnson, the guy we were just talking about, who's supposedly sold the soul of the devil at the cross, he mentions song Crossroads. I went down the crossroads, called out for my friend Willie Brown. Well, apparently Willie Brown was alive. Like, that's the plot of the story. That Willie Brown is really alive and living in an old folks' home in upstate New York. And Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid character, is wants to interview him. And the guy says, "Look, just get me out of here. There's another song that Robert wrote that people don't know about. You get me out of here and get me back down to Mississippi." You know, Fulton's Point, I think was the name of the place he had to go to, where he had made the deal with the devil. Says, "I'll show you that song of Robert's." You know, so it's a really wonderful story. And John Fusco was going on to do a lot of things. I think it's the first pairing of Jet Li and Jackie Chan and Forbidden Kingdom, maybe, or Magic Kingdom, something Kingdom with those two. And he also did Hidalgo with Viggo Mortensen. He did The Highwayman with Costner. He did that wonderful film. Is it Thunderheart with Val Kilmer about the FBI guy on the reservation. That's based on a true story, really. With John Trudell, the activist, was playing a major role in that film. So John is at the core of his films a real beautiful heart and a need to explore the truth. And I've talked with him. He also plays keyboards, and so we have a mutual love of music, the blues specifically, kung fu things, Native American. That movie is really for anyone who is interested, if not fascinated, with this thematic, this whole mythos. The blue. I seriously suggest it's a beautiful film, and Ry Cooder does the music, plays the slide guitar, and Steve Vai plays those are the two guys that play. And at the end of the show, the climax is a duel between, for this guy's soul, the old man's soul. Well, for Ralph Macchio, playing slide guitar, which is where Ry Cooder. Now, for all of those any of those who don't know, Ry Cooder is he's a guy that has been the backbone of American music for 60 something years. He started out very young, and he started with blues and a real Americana roots music, country and blues, but mostly blues. But he'll do a record with a guy from Africa or a guy from India, and he just becomes part of that thing. He's a chameleon, like he's a top musician.
True.
And,
there's just a slight difference. There's really no difference, I've been told, between a musician and a magician.
Well, that's
I've been told that. I did want to point this out real quick because Mitch left a comment and said Jimmy Page bought the Bullskin House, the former home of infamous occultist Aleister Crowley, in 1970. Now, some people actually. So, Kevin,
I hate Bullskin Manor, I think, is what they technically called it at the time. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I'm just going to say that some people think that maybe that's why the Loch Ness Monster is in that lake, because it was summoned there through a ritual.
I've heard you say.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating.
We live in a fascinating world, and we live in fascinating times. And I'm happy to say that for the most part, I still have the same sense of wonder I did when I was first listening to those bluesmen in my early teens. And I think more than anything, and for me, speaking for myself, music reflects the divine in us. The power of sound and the magic, the way it affects our emotions is hardly a profound comment on my part. But it's Robert Johnson had a word for the crossroads of something. There you go. Well, I did a lot of studying, and that leads into my cryptid experience from an academic perspective on voodoo, because I was meeting people that were still alive in that world. Even, there was a lot of bona fide artists that weren't famous, like Howlin' Wolf or B.B. King or Muddy Waters. And if you put yourself in that world, you know how it is. You sound that tuning fork, and create a vibration, and you're drawn to or draw to you that thing of which you are seeking, or attempting to be. And I met some very talented artists, and one of them schooled me, was able to create a bridge between the academic and the musical for me. And what I learned about voodoo was that it was a big misrepresentation of a beautiful religion. Pins and dolls, zombies, all that. That's the dark side. That's called Palamayambi. Voodoo itself was just created by the slaves because they saw in their Catholic overseers an ability to synchronize two religions, because the Catholics had as many saints as the Africans did. And the Africans, I know it sounds like a stereotype or generalization, but most of the tribes that were taken as slaves in the Americas were from the West Coast to the Congo, from the central to the West. And they had a collective pantheism, a collective mythology, and the names may have been different, but Legba instead of Elegua, for instance, but it was the same catechism, more or less. And what they were able to do without being persecuted was create a hybrid religion where they could continue to be faithful to their roots while outwardly becoming Catholics, And so voodoo really means of the people in the language of the fawn, uh, and it's um it's a fascinating study to be sure. Uh,
Yeah, it is. Well, voodoo has a lot of connections, especially down in the United States, down in New Orleans, down the bayou, with
well,
the Rougarous and the werewolves and all that kind of stuff. So,
there's all of that, and then with
yeah.
Robert Johnson, I think what this guy was getting to, and I believe there's a lot of truth to it. When Robert Johnson first, and when I first heard his records, I went, "What's the big deal?" I mean, I couldn't get it. It wasn't there yet. If you start to try and play that stuff, you realize that it sounds like there's two or three guitars going at once, and it's just one guy. But that aside, this is a man that when he first showed up and he was playing with Charlie Patton and Son House and the other acoustic slide players, particularly, he was laughed at. He was so bad, that he was laughed at, and you can imagine the effect it has on anybody, especially a sensitive person. There's nothing like being an artist and having your creativity ridiculed. So he took off and disappeared for some say 2 years, some say a year, some say a year and a half. But I know enough to know that if you're gifted to begin with and you're focused, you can go from A to like G and skip a lot of letters in between. At least it'll sound and appear that way. Now later you have to connect those dots, but if you're a natural talent, you can get a lot done in a short period of time. And everyone has experienced that, I think, to some degree, in something they've done in their lives. And that's certainly what he did, because when he reemerged, he sounded the way we hear him on the records. And not only was his reputation predicated on that, but he could listen to anything, a polka, anything in popular music at the radio time, and play it right back. So
Man,
savant, yes, would be.
that's tonal memory. Okay, that's some massive tonal memory right there, and
A savant, a real savant. But
it's fascinating. Some people probably thought that was witchcraft back in the day.
well, one of the rumors was that he had joined a house, and that house is one of the collective words that was used to describe like a house of worship for voodoo initiates. And
Okay.
when any ceremony is being performed, they have to appeal to a character called Legba or Legua. He is the guardian of the crossroads between this world and the next. Through him, all the other deities will manifest, but he has to be appealed to first. And that is unequivocally true. No matter where you're doing your ceremonies, if you're doing voodoo ceremonies, and it's also true in Santeria, which is very similar to voodoo. So you have the crossroads analogy there, and it's metaphor and literal interpretations. And so when he reemerged, he sounds, yeah, you're right. If words are spelled, yeah, because words have power and vibrations of sound. We all know what vibrations, how different melodies and things can evoke responses in us, either mournful or happy, or nostalgic, or yeah. And I remember reading a quote when I was living with the medium. At one point, she said to me, Kevin, I know you have a good heart. She said, you're open to a fault, but you're a good soul. And I promised you that I would do this every night. But I feel obligated to tell you, perhaps remind you of what you may have forgotten. You are not going to grow spiritually merely by observing phenomena.
Oh.
I do this because the promise I made, I'm doing this. You have to work at being spiritual in the same way you work at your guitar, your gung fu, your chess. And I immediately interrupted. I said, well, I'm a good person, but I don't go to hospitals or read to the blind like Mother Teresa. She says, well, that's not exactly what I mean. Doing good things for other people, being unselfish, that's all part of it. But here, hold on a second. And she went in her bedroom. She came out with a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. And she said, I want you to read this book. And when you're done, send it away for the lessons. For the amount of money you spend taking me to dinner, you can get the entire meditation course. This is not a group that's trying to get in your pants or your pocket. These guys are the real deal. And Yogananda came here with the intent to establish to basically demonstrate the unity between Christianity and Hinduism. And So he created a group called Self-Resilient Fellowship. And I'm not here espousing any just this is all a byproduct of the journey, you know. And but I did get the lessons, and I did meditate because I've been studying Kung Fu, and I was gifted but not advanced. I was a natural athlete, as many people are. But meditation, what they call Qigong, was not something they showed to people until they had been there a long time, improving their character. And Qigong is the ability to summon your eternal force, your Qi, cultivate it and direct it outward, you know. And so, and on the way to that conversation with Master, his name was Wong. He's in Maryland to this day still. And he explained the basic premise behind meditation, how everything was energy and consciousness, you know. And when I was, you know, hanging with her a couple of years later, she said the same thing, just in slightly different words. So when I got the lessons, I was able to see the continuity and things, and it made perfect sense because when I was studying Kung Fu, I realized that there had been a type of Kung Fu already existing in China and associated with the Taoism and I Ching, and had been there for generations. But when the Emperor of China wanted to learn about Buddhism, he sent away to Tibet for some teachers, and they came over, and along with explaining Buddhism to him, they also showed what is now become known as Shaolin Kung Fu. And that's basically the animal style. So monkey, crane, dragon, tiger, snake, leopard, etc. You know, but the premise in that is that you have to do sitting meditation to balance the outer Kung Fu or you'll burn out. There's very few things. Tai Chi moves the Chi simultaneously. You don't have to do two separate things to get to the same place. And it's the only physical that I'm aware of, a sport that I know, exercise that does cultivate the Chi simultaneously with movement. So, God, I feel like I'm all over the road here, man.
Well, let me bring it back. You were headed towards your cryptid experience. You had a very terrifying cryptid experience.
Well, you know, you're right. Thanks for reeling me in. When I was studying, well, this guy that one of the elders, blues guys that had been explained the background of Robert Johnson and his take on hoodoo, which is a little different than voodoo. This led to I've been studying for a while, just reading as many books as I could on the subject matter and firing as many questions as this guy was patient enough to answer. And everything came to a head one night when I was in my little apartment in 17th Street in Washington, D.C. And I had a portrait. I was in a frame tilted at an angle on the top of my bookshelf. And one day, I don't remember what drew my attention to it. It was a very small place, but I just looked at the shelf and looked up, and I saw the thing literally do this and then fall. And I thought, okay, I've been reading probably too many books on voodoo, you know, but I just want to get and I had waited for years to get this particular model. It was expensive guitar, and I got to a point in life finally where I was able to buy some of the things I, you know, always looked at in earnest through store windows for years. And I got this guitar, and I wanted to christen it. So I went out and had a great jam session, and I left the club early that night. In those days, clubs were open until 1:32 in the morning. And when we played, we usually start at 9:30 or 10 and play to that 1:32 and stop. But this was just a jam session. So I left early, and that's kind of like eating and running. You know, I didn't really want to do that, but I felt the need to go, and I did. And I just, something inside me, I just drove back to my neighborhood where I grew up in, which was about a 15-minute ride through Rock Creek Park, you know, as you navigate from D.C. to Maryland through the park. And you end up in Rock Creek Park, specifically in an area that's called Kensington, Maryland. And I parked the car at a crossroads. And I got out of the car with the guitar, and I walked into the woods. And I hadn't gotten 10 feet into the wood line when this shape rose up in front of me, maybe about 10 yards away, 15 at the most, and with no warning. It was weird. It was like it came out of like a genie out of a bottle. It just rose up like it had been squatting or lying down, and it was huge. I did not hear any growls. I did not smell anything. But by this time, I'd already been through cancer once. I dealt with legal issues. I had guns pointed at my head. We all get tried, and fear, there's different kinds of fear. And we all want to think we're going to handle it with cool and aplomb. And, for a sensitive guy, I was surprised at myself with some of the things I stood up to. But this night, man, I was just like a little girl. I froze and I just choked. I could not move. I was incapable of thought, speech, or movement for at least 10 seconds. And this thing, it was at least a head and a half taller and at 3 feet at the shoulders, 3 feet across. I've never been so terrified in my life. And when you get a cancer diagnosis, I mean, everyone goes through a rite of passage, as I was saying, but with cancer, it's like you not only go through the grueling treatment, and in my case, I was throwing up from 7 in the morning to about 3 in the afternoon at 3 to 5 minute intervals. But then you have to wait for a certain period of time for the doctor to say, okay, it's gone now, And so you live with that fear,
Mm-hmm.
to a lesser or greater extent, depending upon who you are and a variety of elements and characteristics going on in your life. And like I said, I knew what fear was, but I'd never felt anything remotely like this before. And when I was able to consciously regain power of motion, I started to walk backwards slowly until I think I was maybe 10, 15 feet back. I turned and just made it to the car really very swiftly. And
Wait, can I ask you something, Kevin?
sure.
Okay, so you went out there. Did you purposely go because you knew there was a crossroads there? You were going to go make a deal?
It sounds. I wasn't going to make a deal, but I was
No?
certain to find out there was a deal to be made.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And
That's wild.
I mean, I've never been so short-sighted that I would, and at this point, I wasn't young then, I was how old am I at this point? In my 40s, it's not the time you want to make a deal with the devil, I don't know what any time is, but, I think when you're young,
40 sounds about right, too. I mean, it could be any time, right? Yeah.
yeah, challenge.
To get into the creature that showed up, though, do you think that was some sort of like a werewolf or a Bigfoot or an
I did
entity?
not, now it had to have been a Bigfoot or something because the head was round. The one thing I remember, there was no ear. I didn't see the ears or the muzzle. There was no growl or smell. But I'm telling you, man, I know what I saw. And at the time, I knew anything about cryptids. I had not had anything other than these prescient dreams, like the kind I started the show off with. I've had those every couple of years ever since, and they never cease to amaze me and whatever person I'm sharing it with. We all get gifted in certain ways. I never really was. I don't have the wisdom to understand why I was given that grace, but I think if nothing else, it's been a reminder of commitment. For speaking for myself from a very young age, not having a father was a big deal for me at one point in my life. And my mother grew very distant as I became a young man, which made things even more challenging. But I always talked to God in the language of my heart, like so many of us do. And I always felt like God was there listening. And I felt God's response in the form of nature, I guess, more than anything, until these dreams started happening. And to give you an idea, I just one more, if you will indulge me. After the medium and I broke up, I went back. We'd been living up in Long Beach. Her mom had been diagnosed with cancer, and I got a room in the YMCA while she moved in with her mom. And when we broke up, I went back to Laguna to work with my friend at the record store, Sam. and I had another gal on my arm pretty soon. I was young, you know how it is to meet when you're younger. It's easy to meet people, and but I was still very. And when I was with Meredith, I asked her a lot about astral projection. It was something that's another. I had that experience, man, twice in the same night. But I was trying to retain some semblance of continuity here. So I go back to Laguna, got a new girl on my arm, and I'm still very much, although I'm no longer under her sponsorship, tutelage, as it were, because she's very much a teacher. I had the same zeal for spiritual matters, and I was starting to get the lessons in the mail, the meditation techniques, and I was, really excited. And at this point, I'm like all of it, 23, So I had a dream, another one of those dreams one night, and I dreamed with my new girlfriend in this old house. It wasn't that old, like Civil War era, but I remember it was three floors, and I'm ahead of my girlfriend on the Faustian bargains indeed. I'm ahead of my girlfriend landing, and I go up into this beautifully furnished but completely empty room. And as I'm looking around, I hear some giggling, and I turn, and the very far corner of the room, it was a little girl. She could have been more than like 3 or 4 years old, giggling. And I think, how is she outside? Oh my God, she's levitating. She's the medium. And I turn and I say, Annie, she's up here. And my girlfriend in the dream comes trotting up the landing under the top floor. I turn and look into the room, and the little girl's gone. But at exactly the same 45-degree angle that the medium sat at every night she did a session was a woman, a mature woman, like 35-ish, and I knew somehow that the girl had become the woman.
Oh.
The woman looked up at me and simply said, "Have patience, man of faith." And just then the phone rang, and it was the only musician I knew in town who was taking the meditation lessons. He wanted to take me to the church. He was, "Hey man, you want to go? It's today." So I thought that was, deeply symbolic.
Wow.
Understandably biased. And and the one I told you about about the guy wiring me the money. Remember I told you about that dream earlier?
Yes, you did. Yeah. You also been super in tune with the ethereal and just on that frequency. I think you're on a whole different frequency, and I can appreciate that because I'm on a frequency like that too. Okay.
Well, we're all from the same source, so we're all in different gradations of that vibration, right?
Okay.
And if we give life to it, give energy to it, just give it life, it becomes more through our attention. So I believe that a lot can happen in a very short period of time simply through our shifting our focus.
Mm-hmm.
And, as my master once said to me, what a man sees reveals his true face, and what we give energy to, we give life to. And I don't know what order you want things that my mother's experience with the Fae. Leave it to my mother to say, as I like to say. My mom was the most straight-laced woman. She'd come home from work and have one shot, and one shot alone. And I never had, it was always meals from scratch. She never went on, screwed around, left me alone. I mean, I'm not judging anyone who had that experience with a parent, but I'm just saying my mom, despite a myriad of flaws, some apparent, some not, was like a saint, like most mothers are. And she created an environment. We didn't have any money. I didn't know what a dishwasher or garbage disposal was as I was well along in life. Air conditioning, what's that? I didn't know that till I was well along in my 20s. But she provided an amazing the environment we lived in was safe, and it was full of wonder. We were close enough to the main arteries to get to the city if we wanted to in a relatively short period of time, but we were surrounded with trees and creeks. And well, my mom, after she left the orphanage, she fell in love with a guy that would marry her because she was an Irish Catholic. And there was a lot of, unbeknownst to me, I didn't experience that until I went to England. There was still a lot of prejudice towards the Irish at that time. And that had a lot of, it manifested her in many different ways. Well, my mother was never missed mass. She she left the orphanage, fell in love with this guy. His mom wouldn't marry because she was an Irish Catholic. So she went out west where she got a job working for Sarah Churchill, believe it or not, Winston Churchill's daughter. My mom was very conservative, but very open at the same time, very non-judgmental. She's the kind of person, though our relationships, we struggled a lot as I became a young man. Everyone liked my mother. She just was a good person. And she was always exactly 5 minutes late for mass. She never missed a mass. She was always flustered. She just couldn't get there on time.
Wait, but, no offense to my mom, because I know my mom's watching right now, but my mom's always been late too. Okay, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is.
My mom, when she talked me, of course, into going to Laguna instead of Chicago, and when we stayed in touch, of course, during the years I was out there. When I returned, my mother made me take a train ride with her up to Albany because she wanted me to be. She made me stand in the spot she was standing in when the nuns told her mother was dead. So you can imagine how she was 6.5 at the time.
Oh my gosh!
And
oh, baby,
she was very devout, but like I said, very open. She was very non-judgmental, and an interesting paradox, if you will. And one night, well, my mom had to have some surgery done. I think at the time it wasn't a hysterectomy; it was something that was invasive. She had to have surgery, but it was serious, but not life-threatening. Of course, anytime they put you under, it's potentially life-threatening. Make a long story short, she called me on the phone and said, "I'm fine. I'm out of surgery, but I want you to come down. I want to talk to you." And your mom's 100% Irish, and not many of those that I know. Most of them have something else in them, usually Viking. But my name is Kevin Casey Patrick Murphy. If you can stand that,
you're super Irish.
It's like a challenge, And the Casey Wiley from my mother's side. Anyway, she said, "I want you to come down to the hospital. For once, I don't want you to talk." Before I could say anything, she said, I love you, son, but you're nothing if not given hyperbole. So I go barreling down Wisconsin Avenue, and the hospital was off of Georgetown Road, Bethesda. And when I walked in, she's sitting up in bed. The covers are up to here. And she seems, not only comfortable, but like I could tell there was something that air of expectancy, So I sit down and I'm bursting at the seams to see what she's got to share with me. She said, years ago, when I was coming home, when I was coming back to work from lunch, I had gone to see our English friend Johnny, and I was late getting back. I was a little concerned, and I stepped off the bus, and the minute I did, the sidewalk, the buildings, everything vanished. And I was staring at a mist-enshrouded thatched roof hut Irish village from like the pre-Viking days. And a little woman about 4 feet tall was poof, just all of a sudden appeared, materialized, and grabbed me by the hand and starts jabbering at me in Gaelic. Now I can imagine I started to interrupt just on reflex, and my mom scolded me to just be quiet and listen. Let me talk. I need to get this out. I've been holding this in for years. And she said, at the home, we weren't allowed to speak anything but English. There was a lot of kids from Ireland that were there in the orphanage, and some Italians too, but everyone had to speak English. So I very, very, over the years lost what knowledge I had of the old language, which her parents spoke. But so my mom didn't understand most of what this little woman was saying, but she recognized this kind of welcome and maybe some sigils or something. She did this gesture in the air, and she said, I couldn't believe how strong this woman's grip was. She was a tiny little thing, and she just dragged my mother through this mist-enshrouded village, jabbering away the whole time as we went from hut to hut, and she would point at certain things, and she said, I think some of it were Druidic monuments. And she says, son, I know that you are into the archaeology and the history of it much more than I am. My mom was into the politics, which is basically get England out of there, liberate Ireland. But she said, I don't know much of it, but I recognize some of these stone artifices, as being symbolic of something deeply spiritual, something of great significance, but I didn't know what it was. And but the woman would stop there for a reason and jabber away in Irish or Gaelic, as it's called in Scotland. And then after what my mother said, what seemed like about 10 minutes, I found myself in the same spot I was when I met her, and she did this again, this gesture with her hand, and everything disappeared. I'm staring at sidewalks and concrete and buildings again, and I hear the bus pull away, and what I thought was 10 minutes was like 10 seconds.
Whoa.
Yeah,
she had like a weird like time edit kind of weird parallel universe experience.
How many times have we heard that, how time really, first of all, what is time, and then second of all, we go to another place, the time is measured differently there. And this is a theme that's been in literature, from, I don't know, as long as people have been writing, but this is my mother. Okay. Now, hippy dippy me with my long hair and, the beard I'm just trying to grow, this is my mother, and not given to indulgence of any kind.
Well, and this is almost like, okay, this is by no means a deathbed confession, but she had just come out of surgery.
Yeah.
She needed to tell you this. This was important. This is not just something she just was like, she waited to tell you this.
Yeah.
After a life-changing event that she had.
Well, when my mom came out, when I was living with Meredith, that was my first living girlfriend. I was slow to mature in many ways, especially where females were concerned.
Yeah.
And, it was my first, I think lose my virginity. I was 21. Most of my friends, I was so self-conscious. By the time we were 21, most of my friends had been with more girls than I had been with guitar strings, I was very shy, but my mom she went hurtling out to see who her little boy was shacked up with. And I think she was pleasantly surprised at Meredith being the kind of person she was. But in the middle of dinner, out of nowhere, Meredith says, "So by the way, Rita, why didn't you ever tell Kevin about his Native American heritage?" Now, I thought the reason I could get tan was because I was part Italian. I knew the Irish part my mother talked about all the time. But my mother, being pure Celtic, couldn't tan. Now, there's a tribe of Welsh called the Silures, and they came from Iberia, came from Spain. And there's a lot of evidence that said that what they call the Black Irish also have Spanish root, either from the Spanish Armada or through earlier migrations from Spain or Iberia, as the ancient academics called it. But, for whatever reason, my mom, pure Celt, couldn't tan. And my father not being around, maybe I don't think I made this clear, but I was born out of wedlock at a time when it was a mortal sin for a Catholic. My mother had my birth certificate forged. It was a big deal for her. And you can imagine the state of mind she was in, dealing with the guilt from, having, me outside the formal marriage, and the inquisitive, if not gossipy nature of neighbors and other people. Well, how come the boy gets so dark? Who's his father? So, when Meredith said this to my mom got as red as a shirt, and she recovered her poise pretty quickly. She said, "I don't think it's any of your business, Meredith." And Meredith said, "You're right, but it certainly is his." But my mother refused to talk about it until I was diagnosed with cancer 20 years later. And then she basically said, "Kevin, it was hard enough being Irish in those days. I wasn't about to tell people that your father grew up on a freaking reservation." So, but the point I'm making is that Meredith was very intuitive, and identity is something so many of us struggle with for a variety of reasons. And the the implications, and also let's face it, the Irish, along with Native Americans, and the Irish are probably one of the more mystical of the European races. So there's a lot of, I can draw a lot of, connect a lot of dots when it comes to my mom and these topics.
And just the connection to the fae, the fairy realms. And we talk about the leprechauns and all that. My
mother never talked about anything other than politics when it came to art. Because I leave the history to you. My mother, when she wanted to find out about her background, when she left the home for obvious reasons, because we had no family on that side. So whenever she could afford a trip to Ireland, she would go to Ireland. but she would connect with people she was really into the political aspect. She wanted to see Ireland free. Now, a lot of people don't know that Ireland, before the first African was ever taken to the Americas as a slave, Ireland had been a colony for almost 500 years. It's the best kept secret in Western history because the power structure of this the WASP hierarchy that called the shots, especially in the beginning, was in power. And the Irish were considered barely human. They were good enough to work in the fight in the army and work on the railroads with the African Americans, but they were pretty much ostracized. So anyway, I'm trying to share as much with you as I can from my mom's perspective. My mom was very much into get the English out of there. Let's see Ireland free, and had no knowledge, no inclination to read about the Fae or anything like it. Her religion was her Catholicism was her sword and her shield.
So this was way out of her norm to encounter a Fae, like a whole other parallel reality.
When I said to her, when she finally finished, and I asked her if I could start, can I talk now? She said, I said, why didn't you, with the way my whole life has been, the decisions that have reflected my interest in the way, why wouldn't you have mentioned this before? I mean, I was studying mythology, I was studying ceremony magic, I got into kung fu and mysticism with meditation with Mr. Wong, and I met Mary, and then she just out of nowhere just shouted, because I wanted to be a good Irish Catholic boy and not chase this woo-woo stuff. And I said, how can you possibly be so flippant and that terminology after describing something as profound as you just did? And she just got very flustered and got red-faced again. And she said, I just knew that I just knew I was supposed to share this with you. And that reminded me exactly of Meredith when she said, I knew after you told me that dream that I was supposed to show you really, who I am,
Wow, it seems as though you've been shown. Said showed. I'm country as hell, by the way. I just try to hide it well, but but you've been shown a lot of stuff that most people in this world will never experience. And
I don't know if I go that far, but I appreciate what you're trying to say. I'd like to think I would have done more for my life or done more for other people as a result of what can only be described as a type of grace, because although those things are grace, and we all, as I was saying earlier, one thing that kept me going without a father, and as my mother became distant, was I was always talking to God, and I know a lot of us, I like to think most of us do, and I think that was, I don't want to say, it certainly was a grace. It took me many years to believe in or accept reincarnation, just not something I was comfortable with. It was the last piece of the existential puzzle to fall in place for me. But it got to the point where I just went, it's whether we like it or not, we keep coming back till we get it right. And I think that's, and I think the reincarnation was something that was talked about in the Bible. But I know a lot of the Bible has been changed along the way, but I don't really want to initiate any debates on this kind of with anyone. I am not here to do any of that, or I'm just trying to share my journey as honestly as I can, long in the tooth, remember everything. But I'm amazed at how many things that I remember. A lot of stuff is just burned into me in the best possible way. And I've been shown and given a lot, absolutely. And there are a lot of times I hate to say this, where I felt like I had it coming to me. I felt like I've suffered. I've been through. And that's dangerous thinking when you think about 3/4 of the world still doesn't have access to clean water on a daily basis, and we could go on and on. So who am I to think I'm entitled to this or or that? But there were times when I felt that the checks and balances existentially that we all deal with, Creator gives us. He gives us trials to make us better. Creator gives us grace to get through the trials. You
Mm-hmm.
know, rather simplistic way of expressing what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that was. I wish I could tell you more about the cryptid experience, but I'd just be making stuff up. You know, but that
Well,
happened.
I think
That
it's
was real.
wonderful. I think it's
Well,
great that you were able to tell me about it.
I've heard, as we all have, so many of these unbelievably spellbinding tales of people's harrowing experiences with these things, and mine was that way too. It was very brief, but there was no. I didn't have to get that awful smell. Uh, I did not hear a growl, but I did feel the sense of dread that people talk about. But I think that Bigfoot can do that just as much as Dogman. I'm convinced that. Well, I don't know. Maybe it was just the angle reason I couldn't see the snout or the ears, but
Mhm. Yeah. Ona Pedigo, thank you. She says,
I,
Jessica, it's always a pleasure when you have Kevin Murphy on. So much knowledge imparted to us. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you.
thank you. I'm grateful
Ona
if
Pedigo.
anything I say or do can resonate with somebody in a positive way. It's so easy to forget in the warp and woof of it, and it's simple the travails that we all go through just to survive, not to live great, but just to exist, just above the chaos and toxicity of what the world has often has become. That we're here, to connect. I believe we're to connect with God and to be there for each other, and everything else comes after that. It's love God with all your heart and soul, and see God in everything and everybody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You mentioned the dogman phenomenon a while ago, and I was thinking, like, you really impressed me with some of your knowledge about the history of the cynocephaly, going way far back. And I'd mentioned to you, we were talking about European dogmen and how they were portrayed back then to appear and look and to
Well,
be as they are today, where we're having a whole lot of these dogman sightings, and there's a question as to whether some of these dogmen are actually created by governments and paramilitary
I
groups
believe
and
it's all true. I believe that.
you know.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the concept of shapeshifting. I'll just remind you what you guys already know, and probably heard by more eloquent speakers than myself, and that shapeshifting exists in some form in almost every culture. In Africa, there's were leopards. In China and Japan, you have the were foxes. Our indigenous people here of this beautiful country, our Native American brothers and sisters, they have every kind of shapeshifting you can imagine. And you have the northern climates, you have the werewolves. Of the 54 Icelandic sagas that are the written, version of the Viking people's history, of the 54 main sagas, 15 of them include stories of werewolves. So this concept of shifting or being able to is a theme that has been here from the very beginning, and it's for a good reason. I mean, what I was able to understand from now, I didn't not one of those guys who saw dances with wolves and then suddenly discovered Sue grandmother at the bottom of a third shot glass and show up on the res with a feather in his hair. I mean, but I did, want to connect dots. When you don't have any family, no brothers or sisters, it's kind of bewildering, especially when you're around other people with big, happy, even dysfunctional families, a family. So when I was on the res and trying to find out about my own background, I spent as much time with the elders as I could. And it was when I was able to connect, it was always a rewarding. And I remember one of them said, "Well, we call all animals the four-legged people," and that struck me right away. Uh, and I also remember him saying that uh, shape shifting was something that was done. All the tribes knew of it, but it didn't have a negative connotation until the Europeans showed up. And it's from that you get Wendigos and Skinwalkers. But at the beginning, it said we also had an understanding of what you call Bigfoot, and there was also dogmen. But most of the people, as he called the tribe, we don't talk about the dogmen, and we don't have to. We just don't. And what I encounter from my, because the first thing I read as a kid, and I'm a chess player, I can memorize things pretty well. I started playing at an early age. I won a tournament when I was 13. I was just sucked in ever since. I play about 30 games a day I have going at a given time to keep my brain from atrophying. And so I remember a lot of what I read. I can't remember where I left my phone, but I can remember that Herodotus wrote about the cynocephalus in Libya and India. And then I also remember Marco Polo writing about an island off the coast of India. I remember one of the shahs, or one of the rulers of India, who had to make an annual payment with a whole tribe of dogmen to keep them from screwing his kingdom up. Alexander the Great. I mean, they're all over history. It's been hidden, like a lot of things are hidden. Like, why are the bones of the giants taken by the Smithsonian? Why? This is something Native American would talk about. Every tribe has a version of that, of the red-haired, pale-skinned, cannibal, 6-digit giants that they battled for supremacy of this land. Yeah, it's absolutely. When people tell me that history was boring for them, I feel bad, because that just means they had a shitty teacher. Pardon my language, because they know somebody was a bad student. In my opinion, it's just a bad teacher.
Oh man, Kevin, I got to tell you. So I have a son who's about to be 12 in the next couple of weeks.
Wow!
And he, well, thank you. He's a good kid. Okay, but he has always been into history and the true history of here, and we really don't know our true history, to be honest with you. But he knows, like, I'm going to call it like an alternative history than what he's taught in school. He's in public school, by the way. Okay, but he's at a good school. But however, his teachers have gotten, they appreciate his inquisitiveness, but he's usually telling them about stuff. Of course, he's got a mom who's a Bigfoot dogman investigator. Okay, so he's got me for a mom. So of course I question everything. My son questions everything, and it rubs the teachers the wrong way. Okay. Yeah. When he does that. But it's important that we have kids like that in our schools right now, especially the public schools. Yeah. To question the narratives. You know what I mean?
I agree. Well, I think we all know that so much has been shaped for us, hidden from us, for an agenda that we're not quite, well, most of us are not quite clear of yet. There's no question. And I think that's the importance of keeping your sense of wonder alive. Keep questioning, keep searching, and lean into your faith during the trying times. I've always believed that God, at the risk of sounding somewhat cliche, God doesn't care about our mistakes as much as he does our indifference, Mm-hmm. And we're never more centered and stronger than we speak a truth and have that confirmed by, what does it say? Whenever two or more, Christ said, whenever two or more gather in my name, there I am in the midst of them, Mm-hmm. Affirm a thing to be a thing, it's something holy like that. You're empowered that much more. And it's important to keep that kind of zeal, I believe, that kind of faith percolating, and conversations of any kind are better than being silent, I mean, yeah. of this, nature.
That's right. I mean, I don't know. Don't tell my kids' teachers that. They would rather my kid not question everything they say every day, I think.
At 12, how could he not? I mean,
well, they don't. Well, it's kind of the state of the world right now. They don't want us questioning things, whoever they are. Not questioning things, not questioning the narrative, going along and be a good little boy and girl. And do as we say. and some of us just don't. We don't live like that. You know what I mean? So I don't. I do what I want.
The world right now. It is never, and all that. I was trying to remember who it was. I think it might have been the guy that made the documentary about Montauk. I do him injustice and not think of his name.
Oh, is it Al Bielek or
Prescient, maybe.
oh, okay, sorry.
And he said, this wasn't going on just a few years ago. This being this climate that we're experiencing. As I said earlier, everything seems to have ratcheted up dramatically just in the last. I mean, things are dramatically different now than they were just 5 years ago. There's more awareness. It seems like the ante just keeps being raised, metaphysically speaking.
They keep upping the ante. That's right. And but we're also upping the ante with the disclosure and speaking publicly about the things that we've experienced as well, and bringing to light the things that have been in the shadows and hidden for so long. And I was doing Bigfoot field research for 10 years before I ever spoke publicly about it. I didn't speak publicly about any of this stuff. I never meant to. Yeah. But it's like I had a calling to come out and start speaking about it, and things just kind of snowballed. and here I am. Okay. But it's just a time, the world is changing. The energies are shifting. And it's time for the world to know the truth about some things, and things that have been hidden in the dark are coming to light now. So we live in a strange universe.
What's that?
I said we live in a strange universe.
Yes.
And it's okay to talk about it.
It's what there aren't enough hours in the day. Sometimes I feel that there's just so much happening, and it seems like warp factor. Like the proverbial snowball going down the hill, getting faster, bigger. That's how That's how I feel right now. That universe is not too good or evil. Yeah, that's a good point, Mother Goose. My master used to say the same thing in his own way. Yeah, and it's the Chinese who say, "May you live in interesting times," but I think they mean it more like a curse. But yeah, we're certainly there. And I read that Orange County. My girlfriend brought over the Orange County Register. Here I am, a Bohemian living in Orange County, the Republican bastion. Bright lights, hot orbs, UFO files. We still leave much to the public imagination. And it talks about Trump's disclosure. So if I'm repeating myself, it's because I'm getting old. But,
I have senior moments all the time. Okay. And my son thinks that I'm super old. I'm not he gave me, actually, I'm not going to show it publicly right now, but he came home with a Mother's Day card on Friday or on Thursday. And it said, Happy Mother's Day. And it had a list of all this, like how well he knows me basically. And it said, well, how old is your mom? And he put he gave me several extra years. Okay. Like he thinks that I'm like way older than I really am. And he told I'm not going to tell you what all he said. It was funny. I don't think my kid knows me as well as I thought he did. Okay. But anyways, yeah, you're not that old, but I have senior moments too. Is what I'm saying.
You know what they say? It ain't the years, it's the mileage.
That sounds bad too, but okay.
It does. If you think about it. I'm amazed I'm still alive, but
hey, me too. I'm amazed I'm still alive. Okay, so
when I asked my mother about the Fae, I said, were you waiting for a special time to share? Because that seems to be not the kind of thing you could turn the page on very easily. And she said, I just was waiting for what I thought was the right time. And she says, every time you go, we have to go under for surgery. There's always, you're kind of rolling the dice. So I just figured I better spit it out now. I said, well, has anything like that ever happened to you like that? And she said, and she mentioned one other thing. And it was, I was in a bad car accident, and she said that right before the phone rang, she smelled oil, like car oil, But my mother never claimed to be an empath or anything like that. But something of the magnitude of a portal opening like that, when you're stepping off a city bus, that doesn't just happen to anybody.
Mm-mm.
But when I consider how hard her life was, and at the home, and the years that she spent, alone, because there was a lot of guys that wanted to be with her, but she says, I just didn't love them. I loved your father, and I never loved anyone else. Uh,
No.
and so I felt bad that she was so alone so much, and that we both were. But I had to go out as a human being does, to go out and make your way. You
Yeah.
know, find out who you are and what you're going to do in this life, what you're going to be in this life. And I regretted a lot of things. I regretted we weren't closer. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
my mom died with $151 in the bank. And I did the best I could to help her at the end. But I don't know how I don't know how much it'd be appropriate to get in my own personal life that doesn't really have to do with the metaphysic of this show. You know, so I'll stop right there for just a moment.
Well,
But
well, I think it's wonderful that your mother shared that with you and felt that it was important for you to know that. And in some way, I'm wondering if maybe she thought that maybe you had experiences like that you didn't talk to her about before or something, or maybe she was expecting you to maybe have an experience like that in your future, and that's why she wanted you to know that. Maybe.
I'm sorry, say it again because I was reading a comment here. I'm sorry.
I said, well, maybe your mother had some kind of premonition that, like, potentially you might have an encounter like that in your future, and maybe she wanted to prepare you for that, let her know that she has had that experience, or um,
I don't know. I know that she said to me once. She said, "You're given many graces at birth. You have a responsibility, Kevin." And what she meant was, don't be frivolous and self-indulgent. And I like what this guy says: "There's only free will and karma. There's no sin, just mistakes and lessons." Yeah,
that's right.
I concur. That everything is just you know, everything we go through is for us. You know, it's our because this is just school. This is not our home. This is a class. This life here. I mean, it could be a beautiful place with beautiful people, but this is not our home, man. Our home is perfect. Beautiful. The Indians. One of the I hate that just in stereotype or generalize, but one of the natives I knew, and he happened to be Lakota. He said, "We feel like this is the dream, and the other side is what's real."
Yeah. Yes, that's what I think you and I mentioned that earlier today when we were talking, not on air, but that's where I had Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Dr. Ram, on my show, and he said the same thing. He said, "Hey, what happens when you what did you say? What happens when you go to sleep?" No, 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 no. This is what it was. I can't remember. What happens when you die? Is what he said. What happens when you die? You actually wake up. Is what he said.
Ah, yeah, I remember you
That's
telling
what
me
he
that.
said. So it's the exact same thing.
When
Took
I
me a
was
minute to figure that out.
when I was with Meredith, when in the beginning especially, I was fascinated, if not obsessed, with astral projection. And I think in my naivete, I had hoped that I would get outside of my body, and some old guy with a beard and a staff would, you know,
Right.
tap me on the head and give me and impart the secrets of the universe and heal me of all my afflictions. And I know what I thought, but I know I was obsessed with it, and I had read enough about it, to really pique my interest. And when I brought the subject up to Meredith, she said, uh, it's not that hard to do. It's part of our birthright. But this information and our awareness of our two selves, that's been dumbed down to us. And I was a little, ever attentive student when she was speaking, and for good reason. And I said, so they're telling me there's tech. She says, yeah, there's techniques to do this. It's not that hard. And she she taught me what one of them was, and I practiced it every day for weeks. And I
Okay.
remember her saying to me, "You don't feel like you get any progress." And the closest I get to what I think leaving my body is this feeling of like you're in a bathtub when you're kind of weightless. I said, She said, she said, I said, but I can't get any further than that. She says, really? I said, yeah. So time went on and the weeks became months. Still nothing. We moved up north. She moved in with her mom. I moved into the YMCA in Long Beach. And I continued these extra. But I noticed when I'd come out of these, one of the technique I was taught, you lie flat on your back and you listen to your heart and you focus on your heart until you can feel that pulse in every part of your body that you will to. You will your forearm, you can feel your pulse there. And that's not that hard to do. You just get, it's just like anything else. You know, you just focus, you know. And I remember when I was dealing with cancer, I used to tell people, you don't know what you can't do. You know, as Christ said, is it not written that you're gods and children of the Most High? So I got to a point where I was able to get beyond the weightless feeling, and I started getting this pressure in the middle of my forehead. And she said, I can't believe you're not getting any more. I said, well, there's one thing I forgot to tell you. And she said, what? I said, I get this pressure here, right here. And she immediately burst out and laughed. She said, oh, your third eye's opening up, but nothing's happening. You know, she's being kind of sarcastic. So with that, you know, encouragement, I continued on with this exercise. And at the time that I was in the YMCA, there was a Denny's across the street. And I didn't even know what Denny's were. We didn't have them where I grew up in Maryland. But I remember being particularly frustrated one night when I was trying this technique. And I got up when I went across the street to get something to eat. And the minute I walked in there, everybody looked like I was tripping. You know, her face would kind of, when she would do that, everyone's looked like that.
Oh my gosh, they were all shifting.
And I, in those days, they had payphones. And I went to and I called Mary, and she starts laughing. And I said, would you, you know, what's so funny? She goes, Kevin, you wanted this. You wanted to pull the veil back, and you have.
Yes.
Look like, she says, I know what they look. You're seeing that matter starts to change when you get tuned to a certain frequency. Just hang up the phone and go back to your room, go to sleep. Tomorrow night, I'm doing a double shift at the hospital. You come over and spend the night at my place and try it there. And you know, you talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. That I went over there the next night, and I was tired early for me. I went to sleep at like 10:30. And, you know, I've always been a night owl. I mean, I up to 1, 2, 3. Anyway, I just was surprised myself. So I calmed out. I woke up at 3 hours later at 1:30. And I could tell the minute I woke up and looked around the room, it was just charged with an electric vibe. The clock looked different. Everything, I just knew that it presaged something dramatic. I went, time to do that technique.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I started to focus, and bam. I didn't have the feeling of going through a tunnel or through a tube like a lot of people describe. 1 minute I'm in lying in her bed, the next minute I'm in what they would call the lower astral. It looked like a Maxwell Parrish painting. I'm in a beautiful valley lined with mountains. And it literally looked, I had those lush colors that you see in his paintings, electric looking, you know. And I thought, God, I did it. And I thought, well, am I dreaming? Is this a lucid dream? Or is it, because I know that if I'm there, if this is true, then thought is immediately creative. And I can will my
manifesting,
levitate, and bam, I started to levitate. But like any profound emotion that happens in that state will draw you back to your body like a magnet. And that's exactly what happened. And I sat up in bed and went, oh man, I blew it. I was there. And I laid back down and it went right back out again. Only this time I was in a different environment. It was still a lower astral, and that everything around me reflected an earth-like environment, but I wasn't in the same place. Although I didn't have a physical form, I had the feeling of walking in a narrow path, trees on each side, but it was spooky, ominous. They had branches but no leaves. There was a very stark and austere vibration. And I immediately became afraid and was drawn again to my body. And later I thought, okay, that was just something I might not have been able to accept if I'm able to intuit it correctly at the time. And that was the second half of my life was going to be really hard and frightening. And it was.
Gosh. Well, you're open to it now. And and they show us this kind of stuff in movies and stuff. Okay, do you remember that movie They Live? Remember that?
Oh, that was way ahead of its time.
Was that Rowdy Rod Piper?
Yeah, that was way ahead of its time. Yeah, I
And,
believe
and his glasses.
man. Someone just said something about lichens. Did you tell your people about my friend from Underworld?
No, I have not. Can you tell us about that?
Well, one of the advantages of being obsessed is that if it's in a healthy subject matter, some wonderful things can come about. And after I was diagnosed with cancer, I came back from California after 10 years in Laguna Beach, and I started working at Sony, where I met my wife. I put the Juke Joint Jokers, my band, together, and we worked a lot. And eventually I got sick, and they thought I was infertile. I had a young wife, and we were starting to have troubles for the first time. A short version of this is that we divorced, and I went through a very difficult time. As you can imagine, either one of those things is difficult. Having them both at the same time is just brutal. And the radiation treatment had me so sick, I was literally throwing up at 3 to 5 minute intervals from the time I climbed off the microwave, as I called it, at 7 in the morning till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. When I came back from that, I got a wonderful opportunity. I felt like it was poetic justice. I got a beautiful gig, the highest paying gig I ever had in my life. And I got it for the longest tenure, 8 years. We were getting 800 a night, which was unheard of for a band in those days. Every Friday night. And the great Bobby Parker, bluesman, was every Saturday. So I got a chance to meet him, hang out with him, play with him. There was a guy that used to come in the club, and he worked as a bouncer across the street. And he was just huge and very dark studio. He had a really deep voice. He could recite the phone book and get people worked up. And he had this idea for, hey, Martin.
Barton's going to bed. Good night, Barton and Tish. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for making this happen. Because he was the catalyst for this. Forgetful. Where was I?
Oh, so this gigantic big bouncer friend of yours.
Guy was someone you would notice right away. His size, he looked like a defensive or offensive lineman. He was that big, and the voice really added to the visage, and he was quite articulate and sensitive as well. And he had a story that was based on his experience of interracial dating with vampires and werewolves, portraying the different white and black folks. And I think you said something to the extent of, I think the suits will probably make it a regular horror tale if I get that far anyway. But that was the genesis of the story. And I went down to Florida. I was at a gig down there, and I love supernatural literature and films. And I saw the advertisement for something and CGI was just starting to get pretty good at that time. And I just saw this thing called Underworld, this advertisement for it, and I just was
best movie ever.
I can't wait to see that, And the gal I was dating long distance at the time was down to see me, and we went to see it. And like a child, I leapt out of the chair when I saw my buddy on the screen. And my friend had gone out and been an extra, actually a little step more than that. He played one of the Pharaoh's bodyguards in the Stargate movie with Kurt Russell and James Spader. And on that film, he met a graphic artist that was aspiring director. And the two of them, if I remember the story correctly, shared a bus ride and a pizza on the way back from one of the days of shooting. And together, my friend, whose name is also named Kevin, he discussed with this aspiring director his ideas for the story based on his experience in interracial dating. And the guy would drawings on these vampires and werewolves. And so he had a sketch pad out. They got an audience with Lakeshore Productions. And as they're going down the hallway, Kate Beckinsale is coming towards him, and she sees the sketch pad. Says, "What's that? Who are you guys?" And the next thing you know, she's helping close the deal, leading the meeting, and that. So she ends up being a star. And I think that, I don't want to sound critical towards anyone's creativity, but The first two I thought were the first three. I thought the last couple were a little formulaic, but it certainly raised the bar on a genre that's often laughable. And for all of us who are drawn to the mysterious and the occult, and it was really for me, speaking of myself, was a revelation. I loved those first few films, especially the first two. The third one was good too, and the third one, my friend had much larger part, and yeah.
There's some of the best werewolf, lichen and vampire movies out there of modern day recent. I guess.
And those and the Howling, those are my favorite of those kind of films of werewolf, films. The vampires are, although there's films that come together, of course. But I thought Dog Soldiers, while we're talking about werewolves, and that supposedly was a type of soft disclosure. That supposedly there's so many things that have been going on in that Scottish border, and that's another. I heard another story about how the American Werewolf of London was based on a true story. How a couple of American kids were chewed up on the outs and out in the English countryside. Now, if you listen to David Bunt, God rest his soul, and David, if you're listening or watching, love you, man. Sometimes he sounds like the fifth Beatle, if you know what I mean. He talks like this. And he's a great guy, and he's been on Vic's show and a couple of others. But he talked about, gosh, I'm trying to remember what exactly he said.
Vic Cundiff, that's Dogman Encounters, y'all. Vic's been on the show a couple times.
Yeah, I think that was the first, the first of these shows that I was drawn to. Gosh, I can't remember what David told me. Sorry, go ahead.
Wow, so the story behind the American Werewolf in London, is that what you said? It was based on a true story?
Wow. David told me that when he had his first experience, and he related to Vic's show, that when he started doing research, I couldn't believe how much werewolf lore there was all over England, especially the part he lived in, which is central and north. And I don't know if anyone knows it, but 92% of Great Britain is undeveloped. Now, we know how much land we have, how many forests we have in this country. We have only 48% still left, but that's almost half. But 92% over there is undeveloped. So the minute he had his experience, he was only said you can either put the covers over your head and hide, or you can go out and try and figure out what's going on, connect dots. And that's what David did. And he said, boy, you talk about revealing experiences, and the people he was able to get, the tallest he's able to get them to open up was quite mind-blowing. And as far as my buddy, the irony with Kevin is that he's a Christian and rather conservative in a lot of ways. I've been trying to get him on one of these shows for a long time, but we just haven't. It's more fault more than his. But I'm looking forward, and hopefully, because I think that there's a lot of dots in this world that need to get connected, and I know there's a lot.
I'm the queen of connecting dots, by the way. I love connecting dots.
And
that's
people, I've been very fortunate in life to have a great deal of passion, and as we know, passion creates the focus that allows you to become one with the object of your concentration, but I think there's no substitute for grace. Without it, I don't think any of us would be around. But Kevin, it's just a matter of time. I've always felt like this, despite a litany of flaws that would bore anyone articulating, them. I've been always able to bring people together. I've acted as a catalyst, unwittingly or consciously, many times. And I'm just champing the bit, looking forward to the time when I can get him, because I think not only would he get the idea for more writing and maybe more movies, but I think that the cryptid community could benefit a lot from having his hat in the proverbial ring.
Oh yeah, Hey, tell him to holler at me. Bring him on my show.
I also want to
welcome.
wish everybody, especially mothers, a happy Mother's Day.
Yes. Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Mothers are special. The existential glue to the universe.
Oh, yes. They're the creators, for sure. And yeah, man, Kevin, this has really been a fantastic show tonight, a fantastic conversation. And I appreciate it. I'm not going to keep you here all night. I know you're on the West Coast, but over here is midnight, I guess. So
well,
I don't, we can probably talk all night, though.
It's a privilege and an honor to anytime to be able to share your journey with people. So my heart goes out to all of you. I wish you all peace and blessings and lots of grace, and lean into your faith. And I'm very grateful for having me on the show, and for Bart acting as a catalyst to introduce us. And thank you for your making me feel welcome, Jessica.
Of course.
That's public speaking is not my forte. All the years I've been playing in front of audiences, it was just, I loved it, but you never really have to do a lot of this. Just introduce songs, and nod with the clap, thank you. But yeah, this has been great. We all want to share our journey. We're all aching to share our story with somebody. Everybody's got a story that you haven't heard and a burden you can't see. So to be able to come on and share it is another tremendous grace. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for thank you for coming on and sharing with me, and for being so candid about all of it. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. Our audience has definitely enjoyed it tonight, and it actually does help connect some dots. And I talk about shapeshifters all the time, but like I've not had anyone come on and explain what they've seen firsthand like that, as watching someone shapeshift right in front of them. So this is a first, actually.
When at the risk of sounding redundant, I don't remember if I said this or not, to be honest, but when she said, were you frightened? Because she said, I think of them as nature spirits. She said, when we lose our innocence, we lose our ability to see and interact, but children and animals can see these things. And I said, well, I never felt, because of the atmosphere in the apartment. She was such a sincere person, and when she prayed, you felt every syllable, man. And the atmosphere was the collective spirituality that was feeling. They drenched the room. I couldn't feel afraid of anything. So yeah.
It sounds like it was a better, like a more positive experience for you. And that's something else. Like
there's
all of this,
remotely negative about any session with her, ever. It was always uplifting, and and inspiring.
We actually have some people in the audience. I believe there's at least one or two in here tonight in the live chat who have reached out to me behind the scenes privately to let me know that they actually do shapeshift and stuff. And so, and they're very nice people.
Yeah, that fascinates me. Let me just say one thing before you say another. I'm sorry to apologize to anybody. I did not have the thing up where I could see the questions, or I didn't mean to ignore anybody.
It's okay. Listen, if it was, I think I pulled up most of the questions that we had. Actually, I may have a couple. Do you want to answer a couple of these questions?
I'm more happy to do anything that would.
Okay, let's do that. First of all, I want to thank Margaret. Thank you, Margaret, for that super sticker. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sovereign Cosmic Wildman was asking, how many times did you witness shapeshifting?
Every night. But in the beginning, it was just her images were all of people. 98% of the time they were women. But as I said earlier, what struck me was it didn't look human. They were so beautiful. They would make, we all have our ideas of what's beautiful, but anybody would look at these females and just be awestruck. And of course, the vibration in the room was just of a uplifting nature, But when she started to do, when I saw the gargoyle-like creatures and the werewolves, that how many times that happened? This has been 50 years, guys. So I would say, to the best of my recollection, certainly enough times for me to remember well. I mean, no more than 10, no less than 5.
Wow.
One
That's
time
so
we came back
much.
from we were having dinner at a place. It was called the Captain's Anchorage in Dana Point, and we had been doing this every night. And we came back, and the room was. We thought the place was on fire. There was smoke everywhere, and I immediately went to grab the telephone and call the fire department. And as I was giving the directions, she jerked the phone out of my hand and said, "I'm sorry, this is not a prank. We made a horrible mistake." And it took her some convincing. It took them, some convincing for, So she hung up the phone. She started laughing, and I said, "I've got a great sense of humor, man. Tell me so we both know." And she says, "It's ectoplasm." I said, "What?" She says, "We've been doing this every single night, Kevin. I'm amazed this didn't happen sooner." She says, "You've read all these books of metaphysics and magic." I said, "Well, I've seen the term, but I'd never seen it before." She says, "It usually comes out of a medium's off her fingertips, or sometimes out of his or her mouth." I said, "I never saw any of that when you were in trance, not once." And she said, "Well, that's interesting." She said, "But I guess you would have told me." She says, "Yeah, but not till the night." And yeah, we came in. We couldn't even see the kitchen, and we lived in a small place. It was just thick, So yeah, that was it. And then as I was on the phone, it's because if you walk in our place, the kitchen was to the right, to the left was sliding doors and Pacific Ocean. So I went to the right and was on the phone. As I turned to look back that way, I could see it dissipating, through the sliding door that she opened up. But yeah, ectoplasm, man.
Whoa. That is so cool. That's really wild. And she's like, hang the phone up. That's not smoke.
Yeah.
So that's wild.
And
She was like, she couldn't believe that you didn't know. That's wild too.
Yes. Well, she said, "You see that term? How many times you read it?" I said, "Yeah, but it's different to read about it and see it in person, obviously." And she knew that she just was. We were caught up in the excitement of the moment, and with my naivete, I remember asking, "Well, can we go to the racetrack with this, man?" I mean,
Go kill some bullets. Yeah. We have another question from Takiyasha. Okay.
No, the energy did feel difference, and that is why, as like I said, I never, because Meredith said, "Did you feel?" I said no, because every time Takayashi, every time, every night before we would do anything, she would say this prayer, and the prayer would always open the same way, But she would really get into it, She would start off, "Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Jesus Christ, saints of all religion, we're gathered here and I hope you will manifest your presence." And then it would deviate a little bit, but she'd go on for minutes, and you could feel how devout she was. You could feel it, man. You could feel it. And when she would stop, the energy, the room felt sanctified. It was just laden with serenity. So as a result, nothing that I ever saw could have been even vaguely disquieting. It's because of her, and because of spirit. It's because when she would invoking that, that's what filled up the room and filled up our lives.
Wow. It's actually quite beautiful, in my opinion. And we have another question. And the question was for the podcasting audience. They didn't get to see the question. They were asking, was there an energy difference when she would shapeshift? If there was a bad energy or good energy? That was the question.
Not at all. Not at all. And that's why I never felt nervous about anything. No. I don't think I could have held my mud, if because what I was looking at, they looked like freaking werewolves, man, and gargoyles too. I mean, demonic. And when she dismissed it by saying, "Oh, I call them nature spirits," I was like, "What?" And then she went on to describe what made perfect sense to me: how animals can see things like that, and how when we're young, we're children, as we start to lose our innocence, we lose a lot of things that are precious to that spiritual element, truth. So and this is, have you ever tried to draw up your scene? I've been fortunate, and I've been fairly good at a couple of things I'm passionate about, but I learned early on it was no drawer or painter. We had a classroom. We're given $1 bill. We're supposed to George Washington, and the guy next to me was Rembrandt. We're 8 years old. This guy is like freaking Rembrandt, and mine looked more like Larry, the Three Stooges. So I knew I was never going to be any. So I did not try to draw anything. To answer your question, Sherry.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's actually a great question, Sherry. Thank you for that. Anytime I've had an experience with like with a Bigfoot, or I've had like ETs, I've had some up close interaction with extraterrestrials in the past, and the first thing I did immediately was draw it as soon as I could. As soon as I woke up the next day, or whatever happened, while it was still fresh on my mind, I drew it, and that was just a way to. I'll never forget it, but just so I don't ever leave the details out. That's what I do. I draw things.
Wow.
I'm no Rembrandt either. Okay, I sketch.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just to remember those details. I guess that's what I do. But
we are the times that we're living in. I have to keep saying it, but at this point, I would believe almost anything: goblins, wizards, fairies, mermaids, vampires. I mean, I think there's all of it. And I left this part out, not intentionally, but I have to be careful when I share this one, because when I first started sharing those prescient dreams, and which I have only shared a couple. I mean, they happen every year or two, and there's some doozies, man. So it's hard to keep things in I want to keep things in proper context. What did I say, Kevin? That's amazing, scary. Yes, it was. But I was afraid to share certain things. You never know what people are going to react to. How you may tip their catechism or their paradigm by saying something that feels threatening to them in some way. And I don't want to make anyone feel bad. It's not why I'm here. One night, I had a dream that was very disturbing, and it felt like the way those dreams always do. They have those special ones, and I dreamed I was staring at vampires posing like a high school portrait, a row here and then a row above them.
What?
All elegantly dressed like something out of an Anne Rice. And I loved the interview with the vampire, but I didn't like the idea that she made them appear like they were like elegant, almost Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, charming creature. They're freaking vampires, man. They're evil. But she attempted to depict a more complicated, multifaceted creature, of course, obviously. But what I was looking at was pure evil. The malevolence coming off those people wrote me right out of my dream, and I was shaken. And I had just put it aside when a few days later had it again, and it was like they were staring at me to let me know, yeah, we exist. We're real.
They exist for sure. I mean, I talk about all sorts of different vampires. There's a lot of vampires that people know about, but there's a big underground vampire scene as well. There's also energetic vampires. There's a lot of parasites. Let's just call them parasites.
I mean, the real evil.
Whether they're drinking your blood or they're taking your energy. Yeah.
I'm talking about the blood-sucking variety. That was very, there was one man off to the side that was, the implication was that he was the teacher, leader, but there was two rows, men and women, and the hatred People describe a lot of times in the Dogman stories that I had a feeling that this thing really hated me from a hate from old times, and that's what I felt in those two dreams. To have one is one thing, but to have another one a few days later, and I guess a Freudian scholar could have a lot of fun with me, but
Right.
um, especially the dream sequence. But this was, yeah.
It's very real.
Yeah, I haven't been unnerved. The only time I felt that frightened is when I had that experience with the cryptid in my mother's house, and other times when I was locked up, I was dealing with cancer. Fear is fear, but this was the threat to your soul, the threat to something. The existential fear is something much more encompassing and paralyzing, and the implications of it are speak for themselves.
Oh yeah, we have another question. Let me ask it. This is from Takayasha again. Did she feel? This is your friend. Did she feel like she was personally shifting, or that she was acting as a conduit medium to reflect beings who are in the energy field she opened up?
The latter. She said, "I'm not conscious at all. The minute the spirit comes through me, I am gone. I am completely unconscious, and what is manifesting coming through me, is that spirit, And so,
That's a good question, man. Wow. So she was just a channel, is what she
yeah,
was. She was channeling.
yeah.
Okay.
And she said that, she said, I'm from a long line going back many generations all the way to France. The family, the last name was Douay, like the Bible, interestingly enough, Douai. Meredith was her real name, but her medium name, she went under the name of April. Not sure why, but she said that the gift freaked her mother out, who was a strict Catholic. But she said, "I'm a hippie. I just embraced it."
Oh, yeah. Oh man, we have one more question. This is a really good one. Okay, Kevin, you have been in like I said, the music scene for a long time and stuff, and I have friends who are very, let's just say, popular, famous. I don't know what you want to call it, but very well known musicians, and they've told me I've had at least one of them on my show who's talked about their bandmates being cloned and knowing real life vampires. Okay, well here's a question from Tareen. Says, question, Kevin, have you ever had a personal experience with vampires in reality? Like knowing a real life vampire?
To quote one old blues man I knew, "Don't make me tell that lie." No. I had a dream. Tareen was as close as I ever want to get to that force. That was absolutely terrifying. I mean, I was in upstate New York at the time, living out in the country, and a very difficult time of my life. Didn't know anybody there. Wasn't gigging. Was new to the area, but man, that was. I've had like I said, there's a lot of fear is fear, but you deserve a better answer, a more eloquent. I don't know how to give it to you other than it was. I've had a lot of dreams, and I've had some real cool music dreams. But the ones I was sharing tonight, they're in a different category. Now, I only shared two or three of them, but before I got to this vampire one, and I've had many. I've had to start. I keep them in a notebook. Those kind of dreams. But this thing with the vampires, I wouldn't at the time. I didn't tell very many people because saying something like that, if someone doesn't really know you at all, I mean, what would what would you make it? Maybe now today's world it's a little different, but this happened like 13 years ago, which doesn't seem that long ago right now, But God, it shook me, It really did, because I do believe they exist, and I believe that there's covens of them or cults of them, and I believe that they're all super strong, super fast, and hard to kill. I really believe that. And there was a show. I can't remember the name of it now. or I should say where I saw it. But there's been some very fascinating disclosures on the internet with people who have had, and I'm sure that many, if not most of you, have encountered some of these things, Instagram, whatever versions of these. But there's everyone. There's this world is it's literally like it feels to me like somebody opened up Pandora's box and turned it upside down.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The veil has thinned. The veil is no more. We're
Uh,
seeing everything right now.
a good
Yeah.
part. A good part of a dog man. What does it say there?
Oh, sorry. Let me pull that back up. A good part of Dogman speaking to people in dreams, they say they lost a war, and the coming war they will lose too.
Well, you know,
Interesting.
there's I think this is it's your show. I don't know if, how much time you got left. I heard a really compelling tale by a guy from Minnesota who was a veteran, and he lived out in the country in Minnesota, and it sounded like a dogman version of Androcles and the Lion, to be simplistic. He was a 12-year-old kid. He encountered a juvenile dogman that was cut up and hungry trapped in his barn, and he bonded with it. He gave him some sausages to eat, and then allowed him to put a wrapping around his cut up arm. And then years later, and that's a lot. I mean, when you're 12, the difference between 12 and 17, 5 years, is a profound one, as you all know, as opposed to the difference between 40 and 45. So 5 years later, 17, he's coming back from a basketball game in Minnesota still. It's snowing incredibly. And he feels like the car is starting to subtly shake. And he wonders if there's an earthquake or something. And out of this snowstorm he's in, he sees this creature come up. It's a dog man. He says, I've never been more terrified in my life. The thing came right up and stared at me and right at my front headlights. And this feeling of fear, dread came over me. And then all of a sudden, it held up its arm. And I said to myself, no way. Because I could see the scar still.
Wow.
Right? So after holding the arm up for, I think it must have been a minute or so, it just trotted off. He goes off and joins a 9/11 happens. He enlists, comes back. He's all shot up. And he said, I was feeling suicidal. I lost a lot of people over there. And I also lost part of myself. And my brain, as well as my mind, was injured. And I was suicidal. And I was living, when I came back, in this 4-story building. And I was on the top floor. I was lying in bed one night. And I was thinking about, just ending everything. I had a gun in the drawer. And all of a sudden, I got this urge to get up and go to the porch, the veranda, open my sliding doors, and I see this figure coming towards me in the dirt, in the dark, and I realize, oh my God, it's a dogman. And then again, holds up his arm, and he says, "No way." This is even years since the last one, and
Wow.
I can't put in words what I felt and am feeling now. But I can tell you that I got up the next morning and called the VA and I got the help I needed. And
Wow.
that thing saved my life. I moved down to Florida not long after, and I started to dream. And this thing came to me, this dogman that I had, and it said, "Where are you?" Now, we all have stories about these things being telepathic, and we always hear how evil these things are. And I got to wonder, are they all evil,
They're not. They're not. I bring plenty of people on my shows that have personal interactions with dogmen, and they're actually very positive. And actually, Gary Spikes is in the chat tonight, and Gary Spikes Sr., he has dogmen on his property. They have saved his life before.
Wow. I don't disbelieve that at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. You know, I think anything is possible. I really do. And that all living things are bound. I believe in the eternal struggle of good and evil. I believe in the polarity and balance of the universe, the yin and yang of it. And I don't believe in accidents or coincidence, so to speak. Uh,
No.
but
Dogmen get a bad rep, though, by the way. Dogmen get a really bad rep. And when you go on YouTube and you go online and you look up videos about dogmen, it's all about dogmen attacks. And really, honestly, that's not the majority of reports that we get and eyewitness accounts. They're not that violent usually. Okay.
well, the things that
But,
have always disturbed me is that the unnecessary, the slaughtering for not to eat, but just for the sake of killing. And there's been a lot of examples I've heard of these things just murdering other animals for no reason, you know. And I have a problem with anything. I just believe that all life is sacred, you know, everything. You know, I step around an ant, you know, on the sidewalk, you know.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's everything deserves to live here. Okay. And, but yeah, the majority of the reports we get, the dogmen are not violent. They're not even that aggressive. They're just scary to look at. And thank you, Brian, for being here. I've talked to Brian before. Brian is with BAO Bigfoot,
Hey,
and he
man.
says he said the dogmen on my property have not been aggressive at all.
Well,
You know,
I
they're
would like to
just
talk to some of these people, you know. I don't get out much.
well, you'll have to tune into my channel sometimes and check out some of these dogman encounters. They are fantastic.
Let me just say, I don't, and I feel the need to say this because I have a couple other friends, and I would like to be there when they're having their show. I have to do a lot in the course of my day to keep my world going. So I have to catch up to these shows after they're, you know what I mean? When I'm done with my work and everything, you know, sometimes I can catch them live, but so I lend my support in that way, kind of after the fact, as it were.
Well, if I ever have any really good encounters of dogmen that are positive on here, I'll send you a link, okay? And I'll be like, hey, Kevin, watch this.
Well,
Watch
you know,
this. It's a good encounter.
the guy that related that story came on the air again on Vic's show, and because he had an encounter with another dogman that was quite different, that was scared him. And you know what the one thing that Vic has said, and others as well, is that they're like pranksters. They like to scare the crap out of like giant children, you know. Except that they're capable of so much, you know, destruction that it's hard to think of them in a humorous way. But it seems that they do enjoy scaring people more than, and I think maybe there might be some cosmic injunction in place, something that prevents them from. And I also think we have to make a distinction between the you know, how do you put it,
The organic original ones from the
organic
planet.
as opposed to the
Yeah.
that are souped up and hot rodded in those laboratories. You know, what the Nazis were doing, canine and DNA splicing in the 40s. So, you know, I read something not long ago on the internet. Yes, all life is precious. Everything, everything, and it was a Geneva Convention law about the anti-chimera. And for those who don't know the role of the chimera mythology, it was a multifaceted beast with the head of a lion, the dragon's tail, and all these different things on the one. So the implications are obvious in that the law was created for a reason because people are obviously doing it. And I think of that because I remember reading about a security guard that had worked security in 9 different countries where they had these dogmen where super soldier type dogmen had been cultivated, as it were. And he said one place in Romania made the island of Dr. Moreau look like Disneyland. It was so horrific.
I don't doubt it. I just covered Dulce Base last night, or was it Thursday night,
Oh,
I guess, where they're creating all these human
that's
animal
one of the
hybrids.
first rabbit holes I fell down when they dropped the COVID thing on us. I told you I made a tangential leap from where I was to UFOs. And I thought about my buddy who had been in the movies with Mel Gibson, talking about the Greys all the time.
But what I had never dreamed how much was out there. And the Dulce thing was one of the first things that I encountered. Phil Schneider's, you remember what he said? He says, I know they're going to kill me, but I love my country more than I love my life.
True patriot. That's right.
He said, I've had, I think he said it was either 9 or 11 friends that had been suicided for telling the truth.
Yeah.
And what about these scientists at the congressional hearings for the UFOs? How many? 11 now disappeared? Everyone that testified.
No, more than that. It's more than that now. There's 15 or 16 now, I think.
Yeah, almost all of them that testified have either shown up dead or missing, you know.
Yeah, I have to put this up. It's for entertainment purposes only, everybody. Okay, what we're talking about.
Just kidding.
We just have to put that up just in case. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's true though. There's a lot of people. It's very dangerous. It's always been dangerous to speak on the things that even you and I are talking about tonight. It's more acceptable now. It's more open, but people are still being silenced over it.
I've been through a lot, like everybody else that lives this long. And when I was sick with the first cancer, I didn't have any insurance. I was selling weed to pay for my radiation treatment. I think my anesthesiologist alone was $50,000, if I remember correctly. And it's became the subject of a witch hunt. And I went through a whole lot of supervision, surveillance, and I'm talking about for years, you know.
Yeah.
So I know what it feels like to have the proverbial sword of Damocles over your head. And this age that we're in is ironic and paradoxical. There's a lot of disclosure. There's also a lot of the same old shenanigans being done to keep people quiet, to keep people from connecting those dots and keep people from each other. That's why we can't afford to be divided in the cryptid community. The man loves it when we're at each other's throats. You know,
Yeah.
That's because so they can just keep doing what they're doing, you know.
Kevin, there's all sorts of, you know, I'm going to go ahead and say, I think there's people planted inside these communities to just cause drama all the time and to keep us trying to fight each other and to keep us looking this way when, you know, you have to rise above it. You have to you have to notice it and you have to just keep going. Okay. And that's my advice to everybody watching this and listening. Ignore the drama. Okay. And all the fighting, it's all fake. Okay. I mean, it's real. People are being really mean and stuff, but it's all choreographed by, I don't know who. So just be careful, y'all, about who you're watching and stuff. It's just, if people are in the middle of a bunch of drama, there's something wrong with that. Okay. So, stick to stuff like, you know, I love these real encounters. I love bringing real people on my shows. These are not made up stories you get off ChatGPT or whatever. These are real time. This is the disclosure. We are the disclosure, y'all. I just saw Bruce Brown. Thank you, Bruce, for saying that. Bruce said that he's been on Vic Kundo shows twice talking about his Dogman encounter. So, wow. Bruce, you need to come on my channel. Okay, come on over. Hit me up. And yeah, you know, Vic has a wonderful channel, and that's like I said, Dogman encounters. If you guys want to go hear some real life encounters, you know, we've got a lot of, you know, podcasters who are also Bigfoot field researchers in the chat tonight, like Bigfoot Dwarfs in here. There's a bunch of people actually. And then Brian with BAO Bigfoot, he's in here. He's got Bigfoots on his property, probably Dogman too. And, you know, we're putting out good information here. You know,
show tonight, was it a good turnout for you?
Just a wonderful turnout. Yes, we've had a very wonderful crowd tonight. Absolutely. And we always have a good crowd. I have the best chat on the internet, Kevin. Okay. We have the best chat on YouTube. And we're on Twitter right now, or X. We're on Facebook Live, and we're on YouTube Live right now. So it's wonderful. Everybody came out to see you.
I'm afraid I'm something of an anachronism in many ways. I'm not even familiar with some of those words you just described or you just used.
Those are where we're streaming tonight. So the different outlets. We're on YouTube right now. We're on Facebook Live. We're also on X. So
X?
Yeah. X. It used to be Twitter. They changed the name.
Okay.
We're on X. That sounds kind of weird. I know. We're live on X right now, y'all. aka Twitter, that one. Okay, but
Do you live? If I may ask a question, I know.
sure.
Um,
You can interview me now. I'm
uh,
kidding.
the area you live in, are there a lot of cryptid encounters there? I'm living in an
Yes.
area that's the opposite of something like that. I live in a part of Orange County that's like it's so sanitized and so it gives me the illusion that like it's a fairy tale of a cow. But then we go outside the domain of this little area, it gets real fast, But I like to, yeah. I mean, you live in Georgia. Most of my friends I met that I've met through playing music over the years when I was on the road that lived in rural areas, and it's interesting now that I'm not traveling as much to playing. Depend more on my writing to survive than playing out live. That's gotten harder and harder in recent years with the advent of the internet. It's practically marginalized live music in some cases, but I would like to get out more because I've met so many people, and the friends that I met, in those rural areas are now getting back to me with, some stories, and I'm trying. I have one friend in Maryland who's had multiple dogman encounters, and two of them were when he was with his eldest son. Uh, very, and it's interesting because he was one of the guys that he said none of those encounters have been negative to me. He says they were scary at first because what they are is terrifying in its aspect, but what happened was not, So that kind of is what you were saying and what the other gentleman was saying a minute ago.
Well, so there's several people in the chat right now, including Bigfoot Dwarf, who's on the screen. He lives in Los Angeles, okay, and he's a long time. Yeah, he's a long time Bigfooter. Yeah. There's a Sovereign Cosmic Wildman's on the West Coast. A lot of people are on the West Coast. Actually, what a good friend of mine, Javier, was my guest last Saturday night. He lives in Fresno, so that's more south. Is that south of you? I think
Fresno is north of me, but I live in the version they call it. Used to be called Leisure World, but now it's called Laguna Woods. Yeah, I couldn't find anywhere else to live. It was so hard at the time that. And I had more cash than I had in a long time. I just sold one of my stories to an independent publisher, and anyway, I couldn't find a place anywhere. And I didn't want to go in an old folks gossipy, kind of. But here I am. Let me get a T-shirt.
Retirement community.
What's that?
So you didn't want to go to a retirement community or anything?
Yeah, I didn't do that. But here I am. So I'm going to get a T-shirt made that says, "Oh, the mighty have fallen and can't get up."
Help, I've fallen and I can't get up. Listen, I grew up in the age of those commercials, the lady with the little the little button in her necklace. We used to make fun of that commercial. I feel bad now because now I'm old. Okay. And I'm like, now I can relate to that old lady. Okay. Oh man. Well, so you were asking me if we had cryptids where I live.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, Kevin, if you ever want to, you come out, you fly out to Atlanta, I'll take you Bigfooting. Okay. We have Bigfoot. We have more Bigfoot in North Georgia than any place I've ever gone. And we also have, I live on the border of Alabama and Georgia. And we've got like the national forest right here where I live. And we have national forests everywhere. But lots of, I had my first dogman encounter last year out in Alabama. So I know where to find them.
What happened?
It was after I was driving home by myself late at night out of a wildlife management area, a hunt club is what they call it, or like I guess it's like a hunt. It's a hunt spot, okay, like where guys go to go deer hunting and turkey hunting and stuff. And I was just driving out of there. It was like 12:30 at night, I think. And some friends were out camping out at this area. And I was driving down the road and I saw some eye shine after I got on the main road. And I thought what I was looking at was, at first I thought it was an African dog and like a hyena is what I was thinking. But like,
you saw the hyena version, huh?
It looked like a hyena, but it was like crouched down in this grass on the side of the road. It was like really tall grass. So whatever this was the size of a bear. but it had the head of a hyena, but then it was so black it looked like a panther.
Well, you know
and it
that
had white teeth. Yeah.
you know that's the one. I mean, the different types that I am familiar with. There's the one that looks like the wolf or German Shepherd, and there's another one that looks like a hyena. So I don't know if that's organic or that's been altered with technology. Who knows?
Can you see the screen? I'll pull up some pictures of the different types of dogmen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh my. Wow.
Yeah, some of the different types right there. Now the one that I saw, it shows a hyena type down there on the bottom, but the one that I saw didn't look anything like that. It was all black, and it was black like a black panther. So it's weird. It almost looked like its head looked like a mix between a pit bull and a hyena.
That's what I have heard. One description of. In fact, just earlier today, I was listening to a guy describe the muzzle as being more like a pit bull than a as the guy said, go away, than a German Shepherd, a wolf. Unbelievable.
Oh yeah. We have tons of really cool cryptids out that way. Lots of dogman sightings, especially in that area of Alabama where I was, and then even right here, we have so many. We've had an uptick in dogman and werewolf reports in northwest Georgia. So we've had families attacked by a werewolf about an hour north of where I live. Lots of activity out here. Yeah.
An hour north?
Yes. Yeah, not even an hour, maybe 45 minutes at the most. Yeah, and just north of here.
Walking in a werewolf.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was a family that had just moved into some property in Floyd County. It's called where Rome, Georgia is. And they were the dad had set up game cameras all around the property. And from what I was told, the report that I read was that he got on his side-by-side or his mule, one of those little, ATV things.
Right.
And he was driving around getting his cameras. And he noticed that some of his cameras were ripped down and they had bite marks in them and they were destroyed. So he went and got his kids, said, "Come on, kids, come with me to go see let me go help me get these cameras. Something's out here tearing our cameras up." And they said that when they got out there looking for their cameras, they came face to face with a 7 to 9 foot tall werewolf out there on their property. And it grabbed one of the kids. Now, I don't know if the dad shot it or what, but he let go of the kid, but he did grab the kid for a second. And they still live out there, I guess. That was just last year, within the past couple of years. I think it was last year. But yeah, it's fun. It's great. Actually, there's a lot of reports around the Indian burial mounds we have around here. So that's one of the areas where we find them, or like cemeteries and the Indian burial mounds.
That I've it's been about 4 years now since I've been studying this particular subject, and I came across that quite a bit with the relationship between Indian burial grounds, and that's all over the country, wherever those mounds are, and that's interesting to say the least. And graveyards, you think about the role of Anubis in the underworld of Egyptian mythology. Juvenile Sasquatch. I wouldn't know. I don't know how they could get a pronounced snout. Well, that would change. But yeah, and the thing about both of these critters have the ability to cloak and to go in and out of portals. That's getting well documented. At this point, it's pretty well documented, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the most stunning thing. To see one come out of a freaking tree, for Christ's sake. Oh.
Well, that's what we've been talking about that a lot, actually, Kevin. Are trees being portals?
I've heard so much of that, and I also heard. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, it's okay. You didn't interrupt.
I was listening to a Native American guy was going with his dad from leaving the res to go to a friend, see another friend on another res, and they were on a two-lane road around midnight, and he said, "I noticed this huge orb following the car." And at some point, it just shot out real fast and then went down in front of him and landed. And out of it came a dogman. And as we went hurtling by it, I looked at my dad, and before I could say anything, he just said, without taking his eyes off the road, "Yep, I saw it."
Whoa. You know, I've actually, okay, so my friend has a video, and it came from the late, well, I don't know if he wants to say who gave him this, but she was the head of Tennessee MUFON. And she's passed away over the past several years. She passed away, but she gave Matt, a good friend of mine who's a researcher, gave him a video, and she asked him to never share it with the public. But yet now I've convinced him to start sharing it when we do conferences together, you know, but maybe not online. But he's been showing it to the public. But it's a video of an orb. It's in somebody's backyard, and it's on a CCTV camera. And in this video, there's a solid, it looks like a metallic orb, and it shoots down past the camera and it lands in the grass. It goes from the sky to the ground. Wow. And when it hits the ground, it turns into an alien, a gray alien, and it starts running around in circles. There's two of them, two aliens running around the yard. And then eventually it turns back into an orb and it shoots past the camera again, back into the sky. I've seen it. It is mind blowing. It really changed. It really changed my perception of life. When I saw that, it was almost like it just made sense. You know, these orbs that people are seeing. You know, we experience a lot of orbs out in the field when it comes to Bigfoot, and we're always trying to figure out, like, what are these orbs and why do they stay so connected to the Bigfoot out there? And you know, we'll see an orb shoot through the trees, and then we hear a huff and a growl. You know, as soon as the light flashes through there.
Well, there was a guy that I think he was from Peru who came up to the United States, and he joined the armed services, and he was on a training mission. And I didn't want to ignore that last guy made a comment about trees being portals. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. And this guy was on one of war games, and his sergeant had forgotten something. And he says, I was suspicious why he would have forgotten this. It was his comms. And right before he left, I saw an orb just appear out of nowhere and land about less than 50 yards from where I was. And right after that, he said, I saw this, what I call a werewolf, you know, come out from behind a tree. And so that was... I sometimes I just put a show on and I just let it run while I'm going about doing my stuff, changing guitar strings, whatever else I'm doing, you know, studying a chess problem or writing something. I just keep it on, you know, almost like osmosis, you know. I mean, so we're hearing stuff. There's so much out there to learn.
Generation of werewolves and servant soldiers begin to rebel, though, more than wolves.
Man. You know, this is really fantastic that you mentioned that an orb basically turned into a dogman or a werewolf. And, you know, I haven't heard that a whole lot about the dogmen, but I have experienced the Bigfoot and the orbs myself and the aliens and the orbs myself. And so I'm 100% sure that the orbs turn into the werewolves. I think it's some kind of non-corporeal form of them. I mean, I don't know. Maybe sometimes I think we just live in a video game and this is all hologram.
I know.
There's that too. Okay. There's that too, Kevin.
I get it. You know, but you remember what were we talking before the show about the kids? I had heard a woman discount her story when she was about 8 or 9 years old growing up, and I believe it was in Texas. And her family had just moved in this place, and there were houses in the street that just they weren't finished yet. And her mom bought a trampoline for the family, and all the kids in the neighborhood got in the back and and play. And one day, right around dusk or so, a ship came over top of the house, low enough for everyone to be sure what it was, and it looked like it landed in the neighborhood at the end of the street where those houses, unfinished houses were. And adjacent to those last unfinished house in that row was a field, and next to that was a wood area. And they went racing down around the kids with excitement and glee and innocence of children. And they go into this around this yard where this last unfinished house and that block was, and there was a flying saucer there, and there was a dogman werewolf creature emerging from it, wearing looked like a robe or something, and with the innocence of children, they said, "Wow, where are you from?" And he just pointed up, and one of the kids said, "Where?" And he looked himself, craned his head, and he pointed to a certain part of the sky. And then another kid said, "Well, why are you here?" And then he said, "To feed." And I think he said it telepathically, so they all, and then they just all lost it, and they started running and screaming. But by the time they would get their parents' attention, this something's really happening here. They all went down, and the ship was gone. But
to feed. So he was looking to feed on those kids, probably.
Well, maybe he was just being that race is just known for its stark brusqueness, maybe nothing other than that. And they're going to go get some deer because that seems what they eat the most of,
Yeah.
Poor deer, such innocent creatures all getting killed by somebody.
Well, we also have this exorbitant amount of humans going missing from our national parks too. So that's always kind of thrown into the mix as well.
I watched all those Dave Pilates things, and there's obviously something to it. The most convincing one for me was that one that had the older guy, the guy and his wife have been together for 50 years or something. He was a hunter, and he'd gone out to shoot some deer, and he saw them inside what looked like a glass prism, and and he tried to shoot in it, and the bullet just went real slow and then dropped down, and then he lost time, and he claimed he was taken aboard a ship, and that he was rejected because he had had a vasectomy, But Dave Pilates interviewed this guy, and they said, "We come here to hunt, periodically to get food, and Pilates had gone on to describe a certain demographic. I think it was white males to a certain age of German or English background. And anyone who knows history knows that the English, are Germanic people if we go back far enough. And if they're not mixed with Celtic. And so it's that I thought that was interesting, to say the least. There's a lot. And there's no accident that a lot of these disappearances are happening at army bases. I'm from Maryland originally, and one of the most compelling stories I heard was early on about a guy that was near Fort Meade in Maryland, and he's just an old country boy. And where I lived, at the time I lived there, you only had to drive 10 minutes from my mother's house to get out in the country in any direction. Places where they're still talking Yankees and Rebels. And this guy was in Fort Meade, and it's a beautiful, Maryland is just, no, people don't know how beautiful that place is. And this particular area is surrounded by woods and creeks. And he described a hyena-like dogman that he encountered in that area. And many of the stories are around military bases. In fact, we went about werewolves rather than dogman. I listened to one gal, and I think the story is called The Bremerton Werewolf, or The Werewolf of Bremerton. Gal in her 40s, 50s, I'd say, who was a night owl and found herself needing to talk to a friend at a late hour. And it happened to be 3 a.m. We all know a lot of stuff happens at 3 a.m. And she took a shortcut. She was walking, and she took a shortcut to her friend's house. And as she did, she passed over, turned a corner, went by a certain house, and she felt rather than heard something off her left shoulder, and turned to look, and she saw a guy in his driveway under a motion light, shifting, vibrating like that, and changing into a wolf form. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, you know what? That's kind of where I got the inspiration for the thumbnail, because you told me that story for the thumbnail for our show tonight. It's an actual dogman or werewolf under a streetlight, and I got the inspiration for that. So I'm so glad you brought that up tonight. that is wild. You know, there's not very many stories where you hear about people actually witnessing the shape shifting. I covered about 2 weeks ago, I covered a story out of Texas, up in, I think it was in like Northeast Texas. And it was a woman back in the 1960s, I believe, who, I guess her husband was out of town, and she opened up a window that had a screen on it in her bedroom, and she pushed her bed near that screen so that she could get some breeze from the thunderstorm that was coming through. And as soon as she fell asleep that night, she was home alone. She heard scratching on the screen, and she looked up, and there was a werewolf staring in her window. And so she screamed.
Wow.
I think she screamed. She jumped up, grabbed a flashlight, and she watched it run off. I guess she saw it underneath the street light outside, and it looked like it jumped into a bush, and then a man ran out of the bush.
Oh,
So
I did hear you say that. I was listening to your show the other night. I did hear you say that.
Oh yeah. So, but she didn't actually watch it shapeshift. But however, it was pretty close. You know, she just assumed it was probably that man. You know, or maybe it was a handler of a dogman or something. I don't know. But it's an interesting story because you don't hear about the actual watching it actually shift very often. So
There's a guy that I don't know. It was not on any major podcast, but I'm glad I caught it because it's one of the most intriguing stories I've ever heard in my life. And it was a guy now in his 20s who was with his grandfather. They had a cabin in Idaho, and they were going out to target practice. And he had a pickup truck with a trailer behind it, all the targets and weapons and stuff were in the back of it. And they got out, pulled up to the driveway there, and started to unpack the targets. He started placing them. And then he said, I heard my grandfather's voice. At this time, I think he said he was 15, but I'd known him, you know, all my short life, and I never heard his voice that kind of tone before. And he said, Caleb, get in the truck now. And I hesitated. I said, well, we just got the target. I said, now, like that. So never having heard him speak like that, I became afraid. Did you hear that? Did you? I'm sorry, I just heard a growl, like, you know, maybe someone's doing that for my benefit. Anyway, it's appreciated. Yeah. So this guy, he sees this. I mean, he hears his grandfather's voice, and I never heard him talk like that. So I immediately went, you know, to the truck to get in, and I saw my grandfather open the door, and in one smooth motion, get in, and release the handbrake, and get the clutch and the turn the key at the same time, and we took off. And I had reflex, looked in the rearview mirror, and I had seen right before he said something. I thought I'd seen this white figure jumping down from the mountain right beside the cabin, but it was a good distance away. But it was unmistakably humanoid. And I was just about to say something when my grandfather said, "Caleb, you know, now." So as I'm reflexively looking in the mirror, he takes my head with his thumb and finger, and he turns my head so I can't look anywhere but forward. And he's continuing as he's picking up speed, and he's getting from the driveway to the dirt road and eventually to the gravel. And you can see behind him in the regular, not the side mirror, but the rearview mirror, this humanoid thing that was white, skeleton white, but like I said, it might have been 7 feet tall, running behind. It looked incredibly athletic, but it looked too thin. You know, it didn't look like the musculature that the Dogman associated, nothing like that. But at the same time, broad-shouldered and very athletic looking, running behind at an incredible speed. And he said, my grandfather got up to 80 and didn't stop until he was pulled over for speeding when he got to town. Years later, and he would never talk about it to his grandson. Years later, he was driving out to an area very close to there, with two of his friends, and they were on this bridge had just been built, and it afforded an incredible view of the valley. And they had come in his pickup truck, the narrator's pickup truck, and he said, we had just gotten out and we're looking at the view, and I swear I saw in the distance something that was behind a tree, the same white kind of figure I'd seen years before. And the minute it saw that I noticed it, it went back and hid behind a tree. And I started jabbering at my friends right away. I couldn't get them to listen to me at all. And in the course of our arguing, which took a couple of minutes, that thing made it all the way across the valley floor until it was coming up the side of the mountain where the bridge was on. And it was visible to everyone at that point. In which case, they all freaked out and started running for the pickup truck. He gets in, he says, and we start taking off. And I swear to God, if I wasn't scared enough, I see two more of these things coming out, flanking from either side. And he thought they were Wendigos, but Wendigo doesn't go in groups. So if it's either a pale crawler or, I don't know, some other kind of critter. But there was no mistaking the spontaneity and the detail in this guy's delivery. He says, as we picked up, I got to about 70 before these things trailed off. I had one behind me and two coming from each side, one from each side. And again, history repeating itself, I kept up the speed until I got a ticket when I got into town.
Oh my God. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking it's a pale crawler probably, because they can move quickly, I think. But
I don't know. He described it as a Wendigo. That was the title of the caption, but I don't know. I've never seen a Wendigo. I've never, I believe they exist, and I believe crawlers exist. Another one of Vic's shows describes an old army sergeant. That's you guys aren't hearing that?
Everybody's hearing it. See, I can't hear it because I don't have my earbuds in tonight. But people are saying like 6 or 7 times they've heard growls. Listen, I do want to say my dog is not in the room with me tonight, so it's not my dog, y'all. That's coming from Kevin. Kevin, what's up with your house?
No ventriloquist that I know of.
No, that's wild. I mean, I can kind of hear it a little bit, but I don't have my earbuds in, so I can't hear it very well. I'm going to go back and listen because the chat is kind of freaking out a little bit. Okay, because they keep hearing it. Yeah, 6 times. 6 times I've heard growls in the background.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
They're like, or I think Hillbilly Herb said, are there Dogman EVPs happening live right now?
Well,
do you hear things like that in your house often?
I don't hear things like that. They don't come around here. I ain't got no money. No, I'm being glib, but I have had my fair share of surveillance and crazy things, but that world, that ended long when weed got legalized.
Okay.
And I'm sure I'm in the radar still, because I don't think once you get in their radar, people with agencies with 3 letters, you never really get out of it, and I'm okay with that. They can follow me, watch me, whatever. I don't care. I'm not running for office. God, do you think
you're not running for office? You're not in politics and stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, that I thought it was just me hearing it. I thought, oh, they're just trying to freak me out, but that's interesting.
It's not coming from I do have my kid here in the room with me, okay, but he's been pretty still, and I've tried to have my mute button on as much as possible tonight, okay, so you can't hear any background noise, but I'm hearing it. It sounds like it's coming from your house, is what it sounds like to me. So that is, it could just be coming over the airwaves too,
it's no one here that I'm aware of. I'm like. I heard some critters outside. I thought the skunk was getting attacked by one of the coyotes, because the skunk just skunked one of our friend's dogs the other day.
Ew.
More like 12 times now, Terrian says.
Yeah, 12 times.
Hold on a second. Let me just check and see if my cat is.
It could be his cat might be stuck outside. I don't know. I've not heard it, y'all. I think I've heard it a little bit, but not as much as y'all are hearing it. It could be Could be a cat snoring. I don't know.
No.
No. So it's not coming from my house, y'all. Now, y'all know my dog Freya used to snore a lot during my shows. And then the other dog, Buddy, by the way, y'all, Buddy ran off tonight, and we found him right before my show started. That dog, I tell you what, he does that all the time. But
No,
anyway.
everything is copacetic here, so I promise not to get used to it.
Well,
So I don't know what to think of that, but
we need to use some sage. Just kidding. Get you some holy water out tonight.
So you said you could hear it, but it sounded like it was coming from my end.
It sounds like it's coming from your side. Like
You wait till you did hear it, because you didn't hear it at first.
Well, I heard it a little bit, but I couldn't tell because I don't have my earbuds in. So I was hearing something. It's not coming from my house.
Well, they seem to be behaving themselves now.
Yeah.
Thank God they're easily amused, huh?
We are protected and directed in the light. Okay. So it's fine. It could have been anything. It could have been. But
we've had dogman encounters out here that I'm aware of was 133, Route 133, which is really only, if you get the lights right, 5 to 7 minutes from where I'm. But I have a hard time believing that in that area but someone wrote in and said, I saw one out there. There were 2 of them, actually. They're going from tree to tree. But the trees are so sparsely spaced that I was having a difficult time picturing that. But California doesn't have a reputation for, but I know they're here, you know.
Oh, California has a reputation for a lot of strange critters and creatures. And we have, so Javier can enter the chat. Listen, Javier is in Fresno, my friend I was telling you about, out of Fresno, California. And he and his team are called Cryptid 559.
Oh, I know that guy because I saw him on a show, but I don't remember which one it was. But I like that guy.
He's in the chat. He's in the chat right now. Now he has actually seen with his own eyes a pterodactyl. Dogmen, werewolves, pterodactyls, and Bigfoot.
Part of what we were talking about Pandora's box. I have heard, I heard on Josh's show on Paranormal Roundtable, I have heard a lot of people calling about dinosaurs in that show. Oh, did you hear it again?
I did not hear it again.
Oh, okay. I thought by the face you made that. Anyway.
Oh, no, I was just rolling my eyes. Yeah, that's all.
A lot of the dinosaur shows. I mean, dinosaur.
I wasn't rolling about the dinosaurs. I appreciate people that tell their stories. So it's just that
pterodactyls, man, for real. And they've been seen, recently in all different parts of the country.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place. There's a fellow that actually wrote a book about the pterosaur sightings, and there's a big concentration of them in Texas, and North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, all the way across the country. I don't know if that's the 33rd parallel or something. I don't even know if that's but it's like along like a certain, was it latitude?
Yes.
Latitude or longitude. It goes all the way from one coast to the other.
The old ley lines.
Yeah, there's ley lines and stuff. Yeah, but yeah, it's just weird. Like, why would a flying lizard, be seen today when they're supposed to have been extinct for millions of years?
Because of what we talked about already, the massive abuse of ritual magic, people opening portals, people not really knowing. You remember that cartoon? Was it Mickey Mouse with Fantasia, where he has the wizard outfit on and the wand, and he unwittingly unleashes chaos before the day gets rescued somehow. I don't remember, but it reminded me metaphorically of much of what's going on. And I remember when the X-Files came on, it was such a great show, and it came out. But 6, maybe 7 of those shows were about ritual magic, not UFOs or aliens. Mm-hmm. That tells you that Chris Carter was trying to tell us something,
Oh yeah. I've wholeheartedly believe that a lot of these sightings where people think they're seeing dogmen, I think a lot of them are werewolves actually. and I think it is all being conjured, and I don't know if like witchcraft and dark magic and all that is at an all-time high right now, or like it's cool to do that kind of stuff. I don't know what it is, but there's just a lot of it. I mean, even in places where we go, like the land between the lakes. I've been up there twice. Up in Kentucky. I was there with Barton and Letitia and War Criminal, who's in the chat, and
I remember you saying that. This guy says, didn't I read a Dogman report with 3 from Laguna Beach recently?
Mhm.
Maybe that's the guy that wrote it about Highway 133, because 133 is what connects 5 and 405 to Laguna. You know, they run north and south, and the 133 runs to the coast, east and west. But I've accounts I've read of people seeing these things that could have been Dogman, but they saw that there were parts of clothes on the shorts that they burst out of, or shirts that they had burst out of, and then there was another story about, there's so many, and I believe there's really something to it. There was the old German guy up in Ohio that worked for an auto repair store, just changing tires, didn't speak hardly English, just walked to and from work, and had to be kept in an iron in a cell during certain times of the month. That was a riveting story. There's so much out there. You start connecting those dots, and you realize anything.
What is that? The Defiance werewolves are from Ohio as well over there. I think is it Ohio or Indiana?
Yes,
it's Ohio.
Ohio's become a real hot spot, and I think it always was. It always was, and that's where for a lot of those things. That's where the one I was describing took place. But now I'm remembering another one.
Oh, there's werewolves everywhere. I've been covering them every week.
Well, what about Roy Stubblefield? The guy down in Louisiana, the African-American guy that was helping his aunt move from Nebraska to New Orleans, and then he liked New Orleans so much when he got there, he decided to relocate himself, and he gets a job, and I think it was Chess King or the old clothing store, and some girl comes in and starts flirting with him, and he wants to pick her up at her house. No, my granny won't let guys court me yet, but I'll meet you at. She gives him a place to meet in Monterey at a park, and he goes up there, and he's stood up. He goes to dressed up for a date. And he's watching these guys play basketball, and when 7 o'clock becomes 7:30, they say, "Well, your girl is not going to play with us," So he goes to the trunk of his car where he has a change of clothes, and he, gets out of his good duds and he puts his basketball clothes on and plays with these guys until at 12 o'clock, the lights would shut off automatically. At which point, the guys he's with, and I think he said there were 7 of them by the time the night ended. And they said, "Look, we're going to go down to the package store and get a beer. Come with us?" They said, "Sure, why not?" And they get out. They head to these tracks, railroad tracks, which are right alongside the park. And there are lights every 10 yards. There's a like a lamp post every 10 yards, so you can see the tracks. But in between those two every 10 yards, but in between you can't see anything. And they're walking down the tracks, and someone had told them about a junkyard dog that occasionally got off the leash, who was a nightmare to deal with. But all you had to do was yell and throw rocks, and he'd go back into the yard. So he said, when I saw movement on a periphery, I didn't give it a whole lot of thought, but at the same time, I was, paying attention more than I had been. And then they walked another few feet, and this thing came out of the thicket that he said it was 8 or 9 feet tall. And they all took off running at the same time. But he said, I heard the unmistakable sound of somebody falling on the gravel, and I heard this awful cry. I heard this, "Don't leave me." And I stopped. He said, "Man, this is Roy talking." He says, "I'm no hero." He said, "But I just couldn't leave him, And I picked up a handful of rocks, and I went back, and I was intending just to throw it at this dog. And I thought, that's a really big dog. you know, and I realized it was on all fours. It was still incredibly huge. And his buddy was propped up like on his elbows looking at the thing, you know, and no, there was no growling, no words, nothing. You know, the thing was just staring at him from about 6 or 7 inches away from the guy's face, this creature.
Oh
And
my God.
and then I hear my friends, my new friends, I guess, run up behind me, and I could hear them, but I didn't care. I'm still looking at this thing, and this thing's still looking at my friend that he'd been playing basketball with. And then he hears a voice say, "Don't shoot it." And when that person said that, the creature all of a sudden stands up on two legs and looks right at them all. And Roy said, that's when the party started. I said, oh my God. He says, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And at that point, everyone started yelling. The guy propped on his elbows, remained propped on his elbows, didn't move. And Roy said, the last thing I was thinking of was throwing rocks at this thing. And it looked at me. And what freaked me out more than anything was the intelligence in this thing's eyes. And it was just too much awareness for it to be a critter. I'm paraphrasing, you know, but not by much. And I don't know exactly how long that suspense remained. Herman, that's the guy's name. Poor Herman. And well, you're right about that, brother Prince. And Roy and I, for whatever it's worth, has gotten to be good friends. In fact, I had a dream about him the other day. And Roy and I were somewhere looking at crawlers, but I digress. So yeah, Herman's back there, and Roy's staring at and I don't know how much time went by. It wasn't much, seconds. And off to the left, the creature's right. Roy saw these what look like reflectors, red reflectors, off about 50 yards. I think he said 6 of them. And the creature did this thing like the way a dog does when it bites a flea, like, you know, at his back, and then turned and looked at these lights and then bounded off into the thicket. And Roy said, you know, I could have sworn I saw what looked like an earring in this thing before it turned away. Yeah. Now I've gotten to know Roy. I called him up, found him on Facebook, and chatted him up. We talked for 3.5 hours. The first time we talked, yeah, and we've been friends ever since. And
oh man,
yeah,
that is really cool. Oh my gosh, I had to been terrified, but you know, nobody got hurt. It's yet another story where no one got eaten, no one got slashed to death. Everybody's okay.
Poor Herman, indeed. And the other part of this, and I don't know, Prince, if you know that Roy went back years later to see what came of all this, if you know, and found out that Herman had died, you know, just a few years after that event, and his son was alive, and his son blamed Roy, and he said, whatever you guys did, you know, to my father. And I think his son felt that they had been doing drugs or something, that because I think either in denial or didn't know the truth. But yeah, I've talked with Roy many times in the last 3.5, 4 years, you know, and we usually do this Skype thing like we're doing now, where you can do that, and quite a compelling story.
I've never heard that story. Thank you for sharing that.
His name is Roy Stubblefield. He's a really good guy. He's been interviewed quite a bit on different podcasts, and I'm surprised. I'd like to see him make some, you know, turn this into something positive. He said that when he went back there to seek out Herman's, to say what happened to him and talk to his family, that his son had become Herman's son had become a gang member and blamed Roy for all of that.
Oh, that's tragic. Very sad. But
Roy, I've heard him recount the tale many times. It never changes. You know.
Oh yeah.
So I believe, you know, and these dreams I get, they're powerful. So when I had one with him involved in Cryptids, I really pulled up a chair when I woke up,
Oh yeah. Man, that sounds to me like it could potentially be more of a werewolf kind of a thing, but I don't know if it had an earring. If it had an earring.
Well,
Okay.
see, what happened, this is the part of the story that Prince probably knows or remembers is that when Roy got back to his day job, first of all, you can imagine the panicked ride home after that experience. He said, I got really drunk and I locked the doors and pulled all my guns, had them loaded, pulled the refrigerator up against the door, like everything you could think of. But when he finally went back to work, his boss, being intuitive, said to him, Roy, you don't seem yourself. Are you all right? I've been watching you all day. And he wouldn't talk about it first, but finally he did. And she just, matter of fact, oh, you must have met a Rougarou. Like, we're talking Louisiana or stuff like that. It's, it's like going to the time or what,
Yeah. It's a little more common down there, I guess. So.
It's different. When I remember the first time I went down and played music, a friend of mine said, Kevin, be careful. They're different down there. They get different rules. It's a different life. You're going to feel like you step back in time a couple hundred years in some places. I had a gig at a mafia place for about a month. We played 5 nights a week at this club, and it's in Mississippi. But there's that area there in Mississippi, Louisiana, and parts of Texas it is like going back in time, and it's very mystical, and just about anything can happen.
Oh yeah.
When I was a kid, things, you knew that there was bad stuff out there, and you knew it happened to some people, but it seemed to be relegated to certain areas, at certain times. Now anything can happen to anybody, anywhere, at any time. And everyone should be vigilant, stay prayed up, as one guy put it. And I stay prayed up and know how to operate a gun too.
Yes. Well, I recommend everybody stay prayed up for sure, energetically, spiritually, and, be able to protect yourself. But we don't live in fear, right? Like, don't live in fear, live in awareness of everything that's going on around us. And, this has been a fantastic show tonight. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, Kevin. I hope will you please come back and hang out with me again?
Oh, I'd be honored. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you so much. I wanted to thank Rhodey 8. What's up, girl? Thank you so much. She says, what other channel can you hear cool firsthand accounts, chat with cool peeps, and witness your own paranormal sound experiences 12 times over?
Thank you, Rhodey.
Thank you, Rhodey. The audience got their firsthand account. They got to hear it firsthand of growls going on tonight. That was wild. I think Summit was growling. Okay.
Now I've been on 7 shows now, or let's see, close to that. Some of them at least twice, and that's never happened.
That is wild. Well, you know what? Rhodey actually lives in the Middle East. She's near Abu Dhabi, I think.
Really?
Yes. So she lives in the Middle East. And
are you serving the country, or are you doing something you can't talk about? Or
yes, I think she's teaching over there, but I'm not sure. I don't know why I'm thinking that you said you were teaching over there, but maybe I don't remember that correctly. But yes, thank you so much. It was a super show tonight. It has been. She's in Abu Dhabi, she says.
Well, I was kind of nervous, and I don't know whether I'm getting old, or whether not being used to this every night is. I lost my continuity a couple times.
Hey, I do that all the time. I do live shows all week, and I have what I call senior moments myself. Okay, often. That's okay.
Age, or whether it's stress or money problems, whatever. But I just I think we got the lion's share of it across, and I'm grateful for that. It's always a privilege to share your story and to connect with other human beings. We're all in this cockeyed caravan ride together, and
yeah.
It's the idea that is we have to fight, I think,
Mm-hmm. And you do have a good memory. Prince Arcane said that you remembered that story well about the werewolf fella down there, and he was bragging about your memory. Actually, you're talking about having what did you call it? Stopping the I don't know.
Lack of
I
continuity.
can't sleep. I'm
Uh,
getting tired.
I'm
See,
lack
you're
of
having a senior moment.
Well,
Okay.
never before could I remember a time when it's usually because there's so many things vying for supremacy in your thought process that you're trying to keep them. You want to stay singular, but there are variants that are competing with one another for authority in that conversation.
Oh yeah. Teresa says, Jessica and Kevin, I don't know how someone could cut in and make those sounds. Maybe something supernatural. I don't know. After the show tonight, I'm going to go a rewind and I'm going to go back and listen because I didn't get to fully hear them here on my end. So I'm going to go back and listen to it.
Like it was right here in my room with me, and the either black op or 3-letter agencies that are capable of that kind of stuff. Like, let's hope they're entertained by our reaction. I mean,
are you not entertained? Yes. I mean,
indeed.
it just adds to the mystique of our conversation tonight. It's exciting. Yeah, this is the first.
Maybe they just wanted to steal the spotlight. As my acting coach once said, ham is okay as long as it's not spam.
I like spam, dude.
I used to eat a lot of it myself, but
Me too. Hey, I have a question. Somebody in the audience wanted me to ask you this, and let me see if I put a star on it. Hold on, because I didn't. I think it was it Belinda asked this. Okay, at the end of all my shows, people from the South. So you live in California, okay, and you're from Maryland, but I always ask all my friends in the South, how do you pronounce Vienna sausages?
Well, my mom was from New York, so we would say Vienna, Vienna. But it all depends on what you were taught. I mean, the real correct is the I is supposed to sound like an E. Vienna.
I say Vienna. I say Vienna. Everybody makes fun of me.
There are places in our country. I can't think of one to save my life right now, but I know there are because I stumbled on the other day where you associate with the correct pronunciation because it's always. But in this particular case, it's pronounced a different way, but it's spelled the same. You know what I mean? Like a case like this, for instance.
So So what's the verdict? Say how do you say Vienna or Vienna?
Vienna.
You say Vienna?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I assume you're talking about a word that's spelled V-I-N-A, right? Vienna sausages, right?
Those.
Yeah, that's Vienna.
Oh my gosh. It's usually my friends from the South, y'all. Okay, everybody else pronounces it correctly. We don't down here. Okay, and it's so funny because everybody has their own pronunciation. Yeah, Kevin, it's the funniest thing. Everybody literally has their own pronunciation of that delicacy right there. And I say Vienna. I'll always say Vienna. Okay, but anyways, Kevin, this has been so much fun, and I've learned a lot from you tonight, a lot, and
thank you. I've learned a lot myself.
It's really a blessing to have you on the show tonight, and so I just wanted to thank you so much.
First, but I'm glad it went over okay.
It went great. It did. Well, do you have any kind of projects coming up or anything you want to tell the audience about, or anything you'd like to promote tonight?
I'm working. I'm a writer and a musician. I started writing about 20 years ago, and I write mostly historical fiction and supernatural stuff. But in order to get published, they say write what you know. So when I first started getting published, it was chess articles and articles about boxing. And thank you for wishing me the best of my music career, which is career. I mean, I've actually had a pretty good resume for someone who you can't find on the internet. But I've opened for and share the stage with a lot of people, especially in the blues world. You get paid to do what you love. It's a blessing. I never thought about fame, or you want to get acknowledgement from the people that you look up to. You want to get respect. You want to be able to justify what you're doing. Fortunately or unfortunately, I had virtually no family I had to be responsible for. It was just me and my mom, and she was heartbroken that I chose this over an academic career. But um, to answer your question in a typically long-winded manner, I have a writing gig, doing a project for someone that I can't really talk about, but it's not for any bad reason. It's just I was swore to silence. And there's another story I've been working on about the Robert Johnson mythology. It's a fictional character based on that mythos, and it's been I sent out excerpts to people, and I've gotten some very good responses. One from one of the producers of the Equalizer movies, the Denzel Washington, not the series with the gal Queen Latifah, but the movies. One of the producers of that. I met him through his wife, who's a writer, and the guy that wrote Bubba Hotep. They turned into that Elvis Presley. If anyone hasn't seen Bubba Hotep, I say rent that thing or buy it. It's hilarious. If the plot is about Elvis, a disgruntled, disillusioned, jaded Elvis Presley living under an assumed name in an old folks' home. Good night to Rhodey 8. Thank you for being here. And he's battling an Egyptian mummy in an old folks' home, and it's called Bubba Hotep. And the one scene where has a walker and he's in a karate stance, and a scarab flying around the room. That alone is worth the price of admission, in my opinion. Oh, there he is. Here's our growler. Come on, give us another one, buddy. Oh, you stopped. Full armor of God, lots of attacks, armor up. Indeed, Jenny Martinez.
Did you give me another growl just now?
Yeah.
Did you forget?
Yeah. Just a brief one.
Kevin, you're gonna have to keep me posted on these growls, okay? Please contact me tomorrow or sometime.
Well, you know what?
Let me make sure you're okay.
This is a senior place, so unless they're over 55, I don't think any dogman's going to get in here.
You never know. There are dogmen in downtown cities and everything. Okay, so
That's my attempt at comedic aside here.
Somebody said get Thinker Thunker on that audio. Yes, we're gonna listen. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna cut that little section up right there I'm gonna have the audio looked into. Okay, we're gonna figure out where those growls are coming from because that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, it was, and it kept, and I felt it was hard enough for me to retain a continuity of thought as it was until this idiot started acting up. But God bless him. He's obviously bored tonight. Hopefully he found an outlet for his creativity, for just a stolen moment, if nothing else.
Oh my gosh. Well, dang. Well,
three
this
more
is
growls. See that? Jareen said there's 3 more growls.
3 more growls now. Yeah. Be hitting up this one's giving chills. Big and gave me chills.
Somebody's easily amused.
He's saying good night. The growler is saying good night. We're just gonna call him the growler. Okay. And just
right.
now through.
Thank you again. Well, thank you for everyone for showing up, supporting Jessica on the show.
Well, thank you so much. I would love to have you back on the show soon. Let's keep in touch, okay? Kevin, and thank you again so much for being here. And I want to thank the audience too. Thank y'all. We had the best chat tonight. We always have the best live chats. And I want to thank everybody for being here and for the super stickers tonight. Thank you, Nathan, Muriel, Kent, Matt, War Criminal, and Margaret and Rhodey and Rhodey.
If you guys like the blues, my website.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, insert shameless self-plug, www.jukejointjokers.com. That's my band name. I'm sorry I have nothing uploaded for video on account of I'm old, but I do have stuff, just haven't uploaded it. And after all the years I've been playing, I can't believe I don't have anything out there. But the website's pretty cool if you like the blues. And that's what I do. And there's some pretty cool stuff coming down the road, but I'll save that for when it's closer to manifestation. In the meantime, that writing is but thanks for asking me. And again, thank you everyone for showing up, supporting Jessica on the show. And Jessica, thank you for thinking of me to invite me.
Of course. Of course. Well, thank you for being in the chat. because that's how I got to know who you were, was through the chat and then through Barton as well. So thank you to Barton for being here tonight.
Indeed. Yeah,
He's amazing. He's a good buddy.
great guy.
Okay. All right, y'all. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed the show tonight, and I will see you guys back here on Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern. And also, happy Mother's Day to all the moms, all the babies' mamas, all the mamas, everybody, all the mamas out there. Enjoy your day.
I'll give you a ding.
Give me a ding.
Yeah.
Holler at me. Okay. I want to
Yeah.
get an update on the growling stuff tomorrow. Okay. So please holler at me in the next couple of days. All right.
Yeah. You got
All right, y'all. Well, everybody have a great night, and please stay safe out there. Don't live in fear. Live in awareness. And I will see you guys back here on Monday. All right, Kevin. Have
All
a
right.
great night, y'all. All right.
Good
Bye.
night.